Hi, Phyllis. Hi,
Hi.
Jess.
Nice to see you again.
Too. Hi, Lori. Hi, Cynthia. Hi, Margaret. Or Margie. Hi, Marissa. It's a beautiful day here. Spring is coming, thankfully. Hi, Annie.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey. Teresa.
Hello. Hi.
It's nice to have the walking towards a good death women here, like a little reunion. It's great.
Is there significance to the fact that there's no men here?
There's just one coming on now, and there's a couple of,
Good.
yeah. It's great to see you all. Hi, Susan. Hi, Chris. Okay. Welcome. All right, if you all could mute, if you're not muted, it just makes the sound quality so much better. And if you haven't figured out gallery view, it's awesome because you can see everybody's faces mostly at once. Or you could also pin the speaker view, whatever you prefer. I'm gonna do, I'll be my car. Cool, Linda, thank you. Be home soon, awesome. We have a really sweet group. It's gonna be exciting. All right, here we go. Hello, Naomi.
Hi.
Audrey, welcome, welcome. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and we can get started. Okay, so welcome to End of Life Paperwork and Planning Workshop, day 1 of 2. So we'll be meeting the same time next week. And even though it seems like a big commitment, you will want twice as much time. Believe me, this is how it goes. Any technical stuff, let me know, put out a chat. Most of us are pretty familiar with Zoom these days, but I don't know, sometimes weird things happen. I am gonna put the link to the web page. Some of you who are agile and getting around and working with a couple of screens can have this one also open. That is the one where I'm gonna go over it, but that's where there's so many resources listed, and where you probably printed stuff off from. So just take a breath with me, please. I have my beautiful candle. I just lit my beeswax pillar, which I'm really excited about. And you all maybe have candles or a little altar near you. So we're all breathing the same air and having our altars near each other. So even though we're on Zoom, we can feel connected. Most people find this workshop pretty engaging, heart expanding, really just opening. So I think we're gonna have a really sweet time. Whatever nervousness you might have now, it's so welcome. And I think it's also gonna be joined with a certain sense of awe and gratitude, which is what my experience of what happens when we talk honestly about death. So I'm going to start with a poem from Rilke. It's called Life's Other Half. I'm not saying we should love death, but rather that we should love life so generously without picking and choosing that we automatically include it, life's other half, in our love. This is what actually happens in the great expansiveness of love, which cannot be stopped or constricted. It is only because we exclude it that death becomes more and more foreign to us, and ultimately our enemy. It is conceivable that death is infinitely closer to us than life itself. Yet what do we know of it? So we're going to spend some time today talking about death. And it's a beautiful and brave and courageous journey. And thanks for being here. I'm going to start with telling you a little bit about me and how I got excited about the topic of death, helping people engage with the idea of death more fully. And to do that, I want to introduce you to my ancestor altar. This wisdom comes from a woman named Sobonfu Somé, who is now herself an ancestor. She was born in Burkina Faso, and she's from the Dagara tradition. And several of us brought her here a couple of times to Asheville, North Carolina. She did a grief ritual, taught us how to grieve, because a lot of us have lost that connection to grief. And so her phrase ancestors describes all of our beloveds who have passed to the other side. They don't need to have been blood related, and they don't need to have been chronologically older than us. So anyone who has gone before into the realms of spirit are called ancestors in this tradition. So I will use that word a lot, and that's what I mean by it. They're holding space for us in the next chapter. They have pioneered this thing, right? This idea of transitioning from an incarnated form to beyond, whatever that is. And so here's Sobonfu Somé on the right. These are sort of some of my death mentors. A big shout out to Sobonfu, who passed, I think, in 2017 or 18, somewhere in the last few years. And then I've also had the privilege of working with the Center of End of Life Transitions, which is also here in Asheville, and Ruth Ostrenga and Caroline Young, and they're Buddhists who have worked with end of life for decades. Caroline runs the Carolina Memorial Sanctuary, which I'm going to talk about, and just had the great privilege of being mentored by them in a lot of deaths in our lives, in my life. But my real mentors have been the dying. And so I live at a community, an eco-village project called Earth Haven Eco Village. I've been there 25 years. I'm not there full time anymore, but we had 5 or 6 actual deaths over the course of 2 years, from May of 2016 to the fall of 2018. And 3 of those 6 folks died at home. We had all home funerals, all home burials. And in my almost 30 years living in residential intentional community, it's the closest I've ever experienced to bonding, right? It's the most sane, most integrated. And I'm going to take you on a little bit of journey next week of how we navigated those, particularly those funerals and burials. But something I learned in that process is some kind of evolutionary program kicks in, and we know how to tend. We know how to tend the dying. This is a photo of us around the body of Kimchi Rylander, who wanted to use her death as an educational experience. So there's some resources. There's a Facebook group called Positive Deathing of Kimchi that she started before she died. And it's really awesome to look through those posts. And we're in the home of another member of our community named Martha. And unlike what often happens in our larger culture of like being freaked out that someone died in a home or a space, Martha moved out of her home to give Kimchi a place to die because it was an easier, more handicapped accessible space than Kimchi had been living in. So it had an opportunity for us caregivers to be there and shift. So it was such a beautiful experience. And I credit so much of my experience and my positivity around death and dying to not only Kim Chi's, but several of dear friends who have passed. So here are some of my death philosophies, so we know where I'm coming from. The first one is death is a gift. I believe it is the biggest gift and blessing of our lives, and not just for us, but for everyone involved. It's the last big contribution that we'll make in this life. And it's a big contribution, especially when we are able to receive love and support from other people because they want to give it. Especially when we have a level of acceptance or relaxation about death. And especially when we can stay in the beautiful mystery, the liminal in-between space that happens as our death approaches. And the second death philosophy I have is that we are the pioneers. Our culture tells us that death is something to be feared and avoided, and in some contexts tells us it's a failure. So we have so little information and a pretty limited understanding of what's possible. So it's really an incredible opportunity and an invitation to explore new ideas, new stories, new notions, new experiences, how to humanize death, how to make it sacred. And then the third death philosophy I have is really a question, which is what else is possible? We are really living into the mystery together, right? What can we do in terms of holistic, intact, sane cultural systems around grief? I often ask the question, is ecstatic dying possible? And I turn towards, some of the giants in the birthing realm, Ina May Gaskin and others who go beyond conscious birthing to ecstatic birthing. And I believe that we have the built-in brain mechanisms and spiritual access to make this possible. So it's up to us what we want to create and what kind of atmosphere we want to create around death. So I have a question for you all. And, it might be in the realm of the mystics or the poets, but what makes for a good death? I'm curious what comes to mind and heart for you. There's no right answer here, but what makes for a good death? You can type it into the chat box or you can unmute and share with us. What do you think makes for a good death? What makes for a good death? Lots of support. Completing my mission in life. I like that. Embracing the present and the future. Meeting the occasion with serene confidence and greater trust in the divine. That's lovely. That's lovely. Being surrounded by people you love. A sense of excitement for the new journey. Woohoo! That's a good one. A good death for me would be to be able to stay aware. Very good. Yeah, to be present. I love that. At peace with myself and others. I think you mean peace. It says peach, but that's cute too. Surrounded by family and lots of support. Acceptance. I love that. Right. Thank you all. I think all of those are great answers. And so I think the question for us over the next 2 weeks is how do we prepare for a good death? And there's what I think of as external preparations and internal preparations. This workshop is mostly about external preparing. So what you can type in the chat box again, what are some of the things you imagine doing to externally prepare and get right with death? What are the things you imagine doing externally? Letting loved ones know how I feel about them. find a green cemetery, update my living will. Excellent. Love that. Dispersing material goods. That's a good one. Don't we collect some stuff? All my papers in my house in order to make it easy for my family. Very well said. Excellent. Financial will in order. Feel at peace with who is taking care of my affairs. Excellent. Having preparations in order. Right. Ease and grace. Excellent. Preparing my family, mostly my child. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, those are exactly what we're going to talk about. This is this workshop is focused on this, right? So how do we purge this stuff in our life? One of my ongoing practices is for anything I buy new, I have to get rid of something like it, right? So I keep things moving so I don't keep a bunch of stuff accumulating. But yeah, keep making sure we make arrangements. And also one of the things I like to think about doing externally is building death literate community, because I want to be able to talk about it. Setting up home so most easy for myself and others. That's a really good one we often overlook, which is what does it look like to have a place that I want to die in that's accessible and easy for myself and for caregivers. I love that one. Thank you. And then there's an internal preparation for death. I just co-taught a class called Walking Towards a Good Death, which is about internal preparation for death. And I'm going to share it with you later. We're teaching it again, my friend Mary Elaine and I in November. But we did a 4-week series and the pieces were letting go, soulfulness, presence, and receiving. Because really, and I just recently wrote an article, which I can share with y'all. I don't know if I put it on the resource list on the website, which is, I wanted to title it, We All Die Alone, because the truth is it's an inside job. Death is an inside job, right? It's our relationship with our soul. So those are the kinds of things, however you think about that. Contemplation, prayer, discussion, introspection, practicing our ability to receive is a big one. So what's the outcome of when we externally and internally prepare for death? Many of you have said this already, but our loved ones know what to expect. And that really reduces conflict and stress and gives people sort of a path to follow. That is such a gift for loved ones. Everyone involved, including ourselves, are guided by our specific intentions. So if I had taken the time to write down what I want, I even myself may be guided by that in those moments. And when the time comes, we can draw our attention to the liminal time out of mind, mysterious space that we're going to be drawn to in the transition between life and death. That is, if we have some time. Some of us may die suddenly, but there's a magical place in the dying process. So when we have our external affairs taken care of, we can more easily turn inward. So here's an opportunity, and since there's so many of us, I want us to take an opportunity to share a little bit with each other, introduce ourselves, and also to talk about a beloved dead, an ancestor. Here's mine. This is my beloved grandmother who was born on this very day in 1916. She was an April Fool's baby, which is like perfect timing. And yeah, so I want to invite you, and I also have her beautiful picture here. Both of these photos were taken probably when I was about 18, so in the mid 80s. So give me a second while I stop sharing and do the breakout rooms. Okay, I'm gonna do, is that right? 8 breakout rooms, let's see. If you don't feel for this exercise, some people feel really private about this, you can just not go into the breakout room and then I'll rearrange people. But the invitation is for you to share a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what your name is, and then to share about your beloved ancestor. So the questions I have are how this person impacted your life and how their death impacted you. So I can type that in the broadcast and send that out in your breakout rooms, but basically to talk about this person's life and this person's death. That's the simple way to put it. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes. And maybe I'll do less than that because we have so much. There's some I don't want to let you go. I'll do about 8 minutes. And you can share with each other and get to know each other a little bit. And this builds the muscle of talking about death.
Did I forget to click the Zoom, the
Maybe
room?
so. I can assign you to room 4.
Okay.
And Naomi, I'm guessing you want to stay here. Is that right? Okay. Welcome back.
Hi.
That was too short.
Yeah, it was.
That was too short. I know. Well, we'll have more opportunities. We're going to do a lot of integration and sharing. One of the things I've learned about adult education is there's a lot of integration time that we need, especially on a subject like this. So we'll have lots more time to share. So this is a great quote from Brené Brown that I love, which is every single person has a story that will break your heart. And if you're paying attention, many people have a story that will bring you to your knees. Nobody. So, we all have had death in our lives. So it's a good opportunity to remember that and to share. I don't know why the Zoom isn't automatically muting people when you come back, but just mute yourself again. I'm still in this intro phase, but we'll have lots of time to share. So I wanted to share my intentions for this workshop with you. We're going to have a lot of interaction, plenty of education, but also a lot of interaction and sharing. Some people love breakout rooms. Some people like staying in the whole group. So we're going to do some of both. My intentions is to introduce you to a bunch of resources to help you, all of us, build comfort with this conversation, to encourage contemplation about death, our own and the death of others in our lives, to offer some inspiration for how to think about death, to start and finish paperwork. Not everyone will get it finished, but certainly all of us will start it, to identify some next steps, provide you a checklist for following through on the paperwork, to build community, and to enhance death literacy and death positivity. So those are some of my intentions. And the invitation here is that all of us is welcome. We're embracing the entire spectrum of human experience. Some of us may have experienced a recent loss. Some of us may be losing someone close to us. Some of us might be in an active dying process now. Some of us might be not very connected to death at all. And some of us might be having some fun laughing about death. So all of that is welcome. It's all welcome. And really, I trust us to navigate as we will. We're going to find a way to hold it all, because that's how to be in the mystery. We're going to practice. We're going to practice here and now. There's wisdom and sacredness in us that knows how to hold all of those experiences. The second invitation is just to be in reverence and mystery, because we know nothing about this subject. None of us are experts. Even the experts are not experts. The only experts are the ones that have died, and we don't have access to them. So we're going to do our best. This conversation opens a portal to a pretty magic place. So the agenda and schedule for today. We started at 2, we're going to 6. I know it's a long day. We're going to be doing wish 1 and wish 2, taking a little break. And then doing some other paperwork pieces. And we have a guest today, which I'm really excited about, a woman named Karen Sanders. She's a patient advocate. I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. And it's going to go really quick. So I have done this workshop in a marathon sort of whole day thing. I've broken it up into 2-hour segments. This seems to be the best-ish 4 hours, 2 4-hour workshops. But please, please, please take care of yourselves. The only reason I do one break instead of multiple breaks is it takes us a long time to get back in the saddle when we do multiple breaks. So I do one long break, and it's just the approach that I use. But don't wait for us to take a break to take care of yourself. Turn off your camera, roll around on the floor, do some stretches, go get drinks or food or bathroom, whatever you need. So you have full permission to take care of yourself. And we're going to do, the best we can to move through this in a good way and still be lively and engaged. The agenda for next week is that we finish the 5 wishes. We do a bunch of other advanced care stuff, the dementia, the MOST form, the DNR form, and then we talk a good amount about after death options, and we touch on financial stuff a little bit, and also building death positive community. And I also have a special guest for you next week, a beautiful woman who's a funeral director, and talking about sort of DIY natural approaches to death care. So it's really exciting. I have these 2 amazing women coming. Okay. So let me encourage us to breathe. Every time we have a quote, it can encourage us to breathe and be in our bodies. David White says, sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. So we're going to get into some content now. Any thoughts, questions, comments, feedback so far? Anybody want to share anything before we go forward? I know I'm doing a lot of talking. Any input? Love looking at all your beautiful faces. Okay. Okay. So there are what I think of as 3 sections, categories of end-of-life paperwork. I'm trying to simplify it down because it can get a little overwhelming. And these are how I think about it. The first category of paperwork is living healthcare, like what you want to happen for you when you're still alive, but can't necessarily make decisions for yourself. So like That's all like, I'm still alive. Here's what I want. That's what I'm calling living healthcare. And that includes words that are like mean slightly different things in paperwork, but are generally in that category. Living well, advanced care, or advanced life directives. The 5 wishes are in this category. Healthcare power of attorney, healthcare agent. So they fall into this category of who and what do I want to be tending to me? Who and what do I want to happen to me when I'm nearing my dying? Right. And then there's some specific forms, this do not resuscitate and the most, which we're going to talk about next week, I think. And then there's a whole category called after death care, right? And these are things you're probably familiar with, like organ donation, cremation or burial authorization. I have this great form called disposition of physical body, final arrangements, after death care paperwork, and the death certificate. So we're going to be talking about a lot of those. And then there's this whole third category, which is the financial documents, the trust, the will, the beneficiary, the TOD and POD, the financial durable power of attorney. We're going to be touching on this a little bit, but the majority of our time we're going to be spending in the first 2 categories, and then you'll get some resources for the last category. Okay, so today we're going to look at wish 1 and wish 2 and the addendum and the checklist. So in order so you don't have to hear me drone on and on and on endlessly for 8 solid hours, I want to encourage and invite other people to read part of these documents. We're going to read it together. We're going to actually go through the 5 wishes and read it together. So I'm guessing you either have a booklet or you have printed it out, the 5 wishes. Is that right? Does everybody have something in front of them, or at least a digital version they can read? Okay. If I call on you to read and you don't want to, just say pass. Some people aren't comfortable with that, and that's completely fine. I would go ahead and put your name on the cover of this thing, because I end up with 5 of them in my documents because people ask me to be their healthcare agent, and then I need to easily find mine. And so it's easy. It's nice to put your name on the front. And so let's just go ahead and start with, let me see. Yeah, so let me just back up a minute and just say the reason that I use the 5 wishes document is that it's accessible, pretty free. Like you could buy a copy, to have a booklet, but you could also just print it out. It's do it yourself, it's popular, it's easy, and it includes some non-medical components, which make it, someone says it's an end of life directive with heart and soul. So it has some really accessible things in it that people care about. And it's an international organization. It's a nonprofit. People all over the world do it. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about why it's, and maybe a good thing to have redundant forms, but at least this is where we're going to start today. So Susan Lapidi, you are first on my screen. Would you unmute and read, please, for me, as much of page 2 as you want? And the page numbers are a little tricky because sometimes they update these versions. So my pages might be different than your pages, but we're going to figure it out pretty easily. For me, page 2 is like the inside front cover, and it says 5 wishes big on the top. Could you go ahead and read as much of that page as you feel for?
Sure. 5 wishes. There are many things in life that are out of our hands. This 5 wishes document gives you a way to control something very important: how you are treated if you get seriously ill. It's an easy to complete form that lets you say exactly what you want. Once it's filled out and properly signed, it is valid under the laws of most states. What is 5 wishes? 5 wishes is the first living will that talks about your personal, emotional, and spiritual needs, as well as your medical needs, medical wishes, excuse me. It lets you choose the person you want to make health care decisions for you if you are not able to make them for yourself. 5 wishes lets you say exactly how you wish to be treated if you get seriously ill. It was written with the help of the American Bar Association's Commission on Law and Aging and the nation's leading experts in end-of-life care. It's also easy to use. All you have to do is check a box, circle a direction, or write a few sentences. How 5 wishes can help you and your family. Bullet number 1, it lets you talk with your family, friends, and doctor about how you want to be treated if you become seriously ill. Bullet number 2, your family members will not have to guess what you want. It protects them if you become seriously ill because they won't have to make hard choices without knowing your wishes. Bullet number 3, you can know what your mom, dad, spouse, or friend wants. You can be there for them when they need you most. You will understand what they really want. How 5 wishes began. For 12 years, Jim Towie worked closely with Mother Teresa, and for 1 year, he lived in a hospice she ran in Washington, D.C. Inspired by this firsthand experience, Mr. Towie sought a way for patients and their families to plan ahead and to cope with serious illness. The result is 5 wishes, and the response to it has been overwhelming. It has been featured on CNN and NBC's Today Show, and in the pages of Time and Money magazines. Newspapers have called 5 wishes the first, quote, living will with a heart and soul, unquote. Today, 5 wishes is available in 23 languages.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so page 3 says at the top, it's for anyone 18 or older, and more than 30 million people have used it. They don't store. So one of the interesting things about their website is if you fill it out online and you print it out, that's your hard copy. They don't do a storage thing. It's not like, oh, you know, go to the 5 wishes online and see my 5 wishes. Like what you have in your hands, and if you make a digital copy of that, that's your record. They will store it, you know, in there with your login for a few months, but it's not like a long-term storage of your finished 5 wishes. Plus you have to print it out and get it notarized. So your copy is, you know, the legitimate original copy. And then the bottom of page 3 says, you know, what you need to do if you want to change it. And as with all paperwork, end of life paperwork, the most current one is the most relevant, right? So you destroy older copies of things. As you'll learn, having redundant forms is a really good thing, and just try to make them consistent. And we'll talk more about that. So it says destroy all copies of your old living will or durable power of attorney, and you can write revoked if you want to keep it in there. And then you tell your family, friends, doctor, healthcare agent that you have something updated. Okay, so let's start with wish 1. Cynthia, would you please read the top section? Well, read the whole page 4. Page 4 is wish 1. And then you have to unmute.
Okay. Wish 1, the person I want to make healthcare decisions for me when I can't make them for myself. If I am no longer able to make my own healthcare decisions, this form names the person I choose to make these choices for me. This person will be my healthcare agent, or other term that may be used in my state, such as proxy, representative, or surrogate. This person will make my healthcare choices if both of these things happen. My attending or treating doctor finds I am no longer able to make healthcare choices, and another healthcare professional agrees that this is true. If my state has a different way of finding that I am not able to make healthcare choices, then my state's way should be followed.
Okay, great. And you'll notice there's room for 3 different choices here, which we're going to talk about. So Cynthia, if you can
Okay,
keep
sure.
reading, read
Yep.
the bottom section.
Picking the right person to be your healthcare agent. Choose someone who knows you very well, cares about you, and who can make difficult decisions. A spouse or family member may not be the best choice because they are too emotionally involved. Sometimes they are the best choice. You know best. Choose someone who is able to stand up for you so that your wishes are followed. Also, choose someone who is likely to be nearby so they can help you when you need them. Whether you choose a spouse, family member, or friend as your healthcare agent, make sure you talk about these wishes and be sure that this person agrees to respect and follow your wishes. Your healthcare agent should be at least 18 years or older, in Colorado 21, and should not be your healthcare provider, including the owner or operator of a health or residential or community care facility serving you, an employee or spouse of an employee of your healthcare provider, serving as an agent or proxy for 10 or more people unless he or she is your spouse or close relative.
Thank you so much. Annie, would you please read the top sentence on page 5 plus the left 4 bullets?
Are there 2 Annies or 1 Annie?
There's 2 Annies. Annie P, why don't you go first? And Annie, next Annie, then you read the other bullets on the right-hand side. That'll be great.
I'm gonna actually have to abstain because I'm house sitting and I didn't have access to print this out, so I'm not
Okay.
able to do that. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So go for it.
The same with the second Annie. I am now trying to print it. I found an old one from when my mom passed away, but that was like 8 years ago. So it's very different, I'm finding, and I can't read it on the screen. I'm sorry. So I'm passing. But I'll
Okay,
be
no
ready in
problem.
about 5 minutes if you want to come back.
Sure, no problem. How, Marissa, do you have access to page 5?
Yeah, I do.
Great.
Okay, so there's 4 bullets on the left. The first one is make choices for me about my medical care or services like tests, medicine, or surgery. This care or service could be to find out what my health problem is or how to treat it. I can also include care to keep me alive. If the treatment or care has already started, my healthcare agent can keep it going or have it stopped. Bullet 2, interpret any instructions I have given in this form or given in other discussions according to my healthcare agent's understanding of my wishes and values. So third, consent to admission to an assisted living facility, hospital, hospice, or nursing home for me. My healthcare agent can hire any kind of healthcare worker I may need to help me or take care of me. My agent may also fire a healthcare worker if needed. And bullet 4, make the decision to request, take away, or not give medical treatments, including artificially provided food and water and any other treatments to keep me alive.
Awesome, thank you. Teresa, I see that you have papers in front of you, and I'm just going to read the top of this page. So what these bullets are is that the healthcare agent can make decisions for us when we are not able to do so on our own. So this is the kind of stuff that the healthcare agent may be dealing with. So Teresa, would you read the bullets on the right?
Yes, I will. See and approve release of my medical records and personal files. If I need to sign my name to get any of these files, my healthcare agent can sign it for me. Move me to another state to get the care I need or to carry out my wishes. Authorize or refuse to authorize any medication or procedure needed to help with pain. Take any legal action needed to carry out my wishes. Donate usable organs or tissues of mine as allowed by law. Apply for Medicare, Medicaid, or other programs or insurance benefits for me. My healthcare agent can see my personal files, like bank records, to find out what is needed to fill out these forms. listed below are any changes, additions, or limitations on my healthcare agent's powers.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so here, let's have a little discussion about this. When you think about this, who are you considering? And let's just start there. I'm gonna stop sharing so we can see each other on the bigger screen. So who comes to mind, or what does the conversation with this person look like? Or what are the qualities that are important to you in considering a healthcare agent? Anything that's alive for you around healthcare agent? Linda.
Hi, I have a, power of attorney in healthcare, and it's an old friend. We don't see each other very much or talk that much now. I mean, I still hold her dear, but I have two now. Now my children are older, so they're 28 and 26. And I guess I'm in my mind, I feel like, oh, I don't want to burden them. But I also feel like, and I mean, my little backstory is right now I have a cancer diagnosis, so it's up for me. I'm not, I'm doing fine right now, but the inevitable then just came up, and I saw how upset my children are by it, which is really why I'm so grateful to take this class, so that I can lead them to know that it's going to be okay, but I don't know who, as I navigate that, I'm just sharing that. I don't have an answer, or expect anybody to give me an answer, but.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm hearing that you have some documents that you're looking to update, and that it has an old friend that you're not as close to. And you're also considering your children now that they're older, but also concerned and navigating their own emotional reactions to your illness, and potential process of decline and death, and wondering how to navigate all that. Really rich questions, really, really rich questions. I would say of all of the 5 wishes, this is the most complex. And so, that's why we're going to spend some time talking about it. So thank you for sharing. Yeah.
And also my plan is to move, and my daughter lives in Italy. So then I add now different laws and things like that.
Right. So you start to see like the characteristics of choosing a healthcare agent are coming up, right, in this discussion, right? So geography and emotional capacity and willingness, right? So here we start to tease out like what are some of the important things to think about. What else? Who else has some thoughts on this healthcare agent piece? Phyllis.
Yeah, this is interesting because I've already done a living will, and my husband and I automatically put each other's names on there. He's 4 years older than I am. I'm 73, he's 77. But as I'm reading this, I'm thinking about, yes, he's the one most likely to be there, unless being older, he goes first. But he has a lot of fear around death. And while I trust that he would passionately defend my wishes, I'm now kind of thinking maybe I need to be thinking, I've got 3 grown kids. They all live close to me. We're geographically all in the same place. I'm kind of thinking that I may need to rethink this. And then I'm wondering, what are the emotional implications of me saying, no, not you, I'm going to use one of our kids, and how he's going to react to that. So it's complicated.
Well, and such a rich discussion for your family. I mean, if the family could get death literate enough to say, what do y'all think? Who do you think should I put in slot 1, slot 2, and slot 3? And what should, dad, husband be doing? Is that role really, does this emotional, to be present emotionally through this process? Really good questions. Really, really good. What else? Who else? I see Marissa and then Lori.
Yeah, as I think through this, I realize that a lot of the people I moved just a few years ago, that a lot of the people around me right now have really not a worldview that's completely in alignment with mine in terms around issues of health and death. And so it's suddenly it's like, oh gosh, you know, who who would I get that's nearby? I mean, I have a lot of friends from a long time ago or a long distance away that are more in alignment with in terms of like medication and things like that. So yeah, this brings up a huge question about my life.
Big, it's
And
big.
yeah, so this is really good. I mean, it makes me
Yeah.
think not just about death too, but about like the way I'm living my life right now and where I am. So it's good.
Yeah, shared reality around medicine, pharmaceuticals, that's pretty big. That's a pretty big one for a lot of us. So I'm hearing in your case, it's geography and shared reality. So excellent. Yeah. Lori, please. You're muted, love. Finding your way back to the Zoom screen to unmute yourself. Sometimes you can just use the space bar. Well, while Lori's figuring that out, let me see if does anybody else have input on this healthcare agent piece? M. Hawkins, do you have a preference for how you want to be called?
Marianne, please.
Marianne.
I don't know why it shows that way.
Well, I can tell you how to change your name, but I'll tell you later.
Not to worry, Mary, but I'll answer. But I'm struck with a lot of things about this, but it dawns on me that it would depend on the nature of my decline, because there are different people who would, I think, match for certain conditions and not others. And of course, that's not practical. I can't know. And I don't understand it. Tell me if I'm wrong, that it's flexible. I know I could make changes, but I might not be in a position to make a different choice if I knew I had X as opposed to Y.
Yeah.
I'm think a lot about matching, for certain conditions. I think that doesn't fit so well with this making one choice.
Well, you're very astute about that, and it's going to come up a lot in this conversation, which is it depends. It depends on how I'm dying. Is it a car accident? Is it a long slow? Is it dementia? Is it, so absolutely. And I will say, we're going to talk about an addendum to the 5 wishes. And I think it's worth considering to spell out how you might feel about it in different contexts. I think that's perfectly appropriate if you feel drawn to that. There's going to be room and space for that. And given the nature of how sometimes some things happen, you might get what you get. And this whole conversation these next 2 days or these next 8 hours is going to be, we're going to do our best to plan for what is our ideal, and in one hand, and in the other hand, we're going to surrender to what we get, because that may be the reality. So they're very astute to pick that up. It depends, and just, think of all your different ways of thinking about it.
It's just as complex as all the rest of this is, and nuanced, or maybe the desire for nuance, but not the reality.
Yeah.
But that jumped out.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. That's going to keep coming up. So thank you. Lori.
Originally, I had considered my son, because he's very decisive, and he has a tendency to do things that everyone else feels uncomfortable with. And him and I have recently lost a cat who we had for 16 years. And I asked him if he wanted to be there for the euthanasia, and he didn't answer me. I mean, he didn't respond the way I thought he would respond. So I'm reconsidering him, and I spoke with my husband and I said, would it bother you if I assigned one of my children as number one? And he said, well, yeah, it should be me. And I said, yeah, but wouldn't you want to have time to grieve? Wouldn't you want to have time to just spend with me? And he said, yes, that would be good, that, someone else would have to take care of the details, so to speak.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and I think that this question, this wish one begs this question more than anything, or it's the whatever. They all beg the question of how do we have these conversations with everybody in our lives, right? And so I'm going to tell you what I've done and what many of us in my world have done around the healthcare agent is we form a death care team. And the death care team is everybody in our circle that is death literate enough and desirous enough to have this conversation. And then they agree to support each other in these decisions, that it's not one person, that there's a team of people. And you obviously have to put one person in slot 1 and one person in slot 2 and one person in slot 3, but there's an agreement that this is a collaborative endeavor, that this is a cooperative approach, and that there will be a supportive environment for this. And especially if we can start having the conversation with these folks about supporting each other, right? Like, what does it look like to form a death care team where there's mutual support for each other? So that's another way to think about this, instead of an either or, is a both and. And that's going to take conversations, right? That's going to, great.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And
That was really helpful
great.
as a team.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you.
Annie.
Well, one of the things that just came up right away, the first word that came up when you asked the question was trust, like the importance of trust, because I'm going to give decisions over to that person. And so it just seems like that's sort of the invisible factor that, again, when you know who the person is, just like any other partnership we might enter into that's really important. It's like, for me, in my heart and my gut, I will know who she or he is.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that. And then I also just wanted to ask if, before we move on from this wish one, could you put up one more time, Lee, that you had kind of a summary of all the health, characteristics for a healthcare agent?
Yeah, what a perfect segue. You set me right up, Annie.
That's right, the characteristics. Thank you.
You can take a screenshot of this if you know how to take a screenshot from your Mac or your PC. You can take a picture with your phone. So yes, what are the characteristics of a healthcare agent? Here are some, and you may have more to add. Available and willing. That's a big one, right? That's a huge one. Are they available? Are they willing, right? Are they familiar to you and your family? Do you know and trust them? Just like you were saying, Annie, do you know and trust them? Geographic location considerations. Some people live half the year in one location, half the year in another location. Maybe it's worth having 2 sets of healthcare agents. Ability to be fierce with medical institutions. This is going to be a theme that we touch on all throughout this conversation, because hospital settings, hospital situations, especially emergency care, their whole mission is to keep you alive. They don't really understand not keeping you alive. So, if you have certain things in your wishes, then your healthcare agent needs to be able to be fierce That's a very specific characteristic, very specific, right? Some badassery in the hospital is not everybody's cup of tea. Yeah. Comfort with the death and dying process. This is a huge one. I really need a healthcare agent that is okay with me dying, is really at peace with death. Capable of making decisions. Somebody mentioned that, hey, my beloved is really good at decisions, or my beloved is not so good at decisions. Literate with medical issues. Another one might be helpful. Ability to hold the process as sacred. And someone who understands my priorities. So you can start to see already that this list might be somewhat impossible to have in one person. Yeah, somewhat impossible. So back to the team approach, and that can foster transparent conversations when we look at a team approach also. I'm not suggesting that you do that. It's just an idea, because you can get together and say, hey, we need to have a conversation about this. There's different characteristics that you each represent.
Hi, Lee, I have a question on the healthcare team approach.
Yeah.
How would they handle, say, disagreements? Or are they always striving for consensus? Or how would even like a hospital or doctor deal with a team?
Yeah, I mean, it's best if they have some experience with collaboration, cooperation, working together, and they have to work it out. They're going to have to work it out. And, maybe the thing to do is to say the first choice healthcare agent is really the bottom line decision maker. That's a way to handle it. I mean, I know if I'm in a situation where I'm the bottom line decision maker, I want all the input I can get. I want other people's opinions big time. I don't want to be making life or death decisions by myself. I would welcome that. So I'm going to send y'all out into some more discussion, since this is such a big one to think about. So, here's some questions for you. Who are you considering? What do you imagine that conversation to be like? What are the pros and cons of the people you're considering? What do you think about these characteristics? Those kinds of things. So I'm really not wanting to do a whole lot more than 10 minutes because just because of how much we have to cover. Does that feel like enough time to talk about this? I'm seeing some nods. Okay. So give me a second to reorganize these breakout rooms. All right, and I'm gonna try to do 2, 2, 2, 2. There's 3 of you in one room, unless somebody decides to not go, and then I might switch you around. So give me a few seconds when you get in there to maybe move you around. I know, Teresa, I yanked you out last time. I hope that wasn't too jarring. All right, so about 10 minutes and I will broadcast it. Annie, please go ahead, question.
Sorry, will you be able to put up that list that we were just looking at, or?
No, I won't be able to put up that list. Do you want to take a screenshot of it?
Yeah, I did. I'll just bring it up now. Thanks.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work. Yeah, I can't do it that way. Okay, thank you.
No.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we go? Any other questions? Okay. All right. Welcome back. Any thoughts? Any
Yes, I
sharing?
have a solution.
Go ahead, Audrey.
Okay, Dr. Fauci is going to appoint me the next attorney, whatever, what's his position?
Don't know.
Surgeon General.
National
or
Health
something.
Director. Health.
Yeah, whatever he is, $400,000 a year. Yeah. And I'm going to just say, everyone who get the COVID pills and everything, the vaccines, they just get a pill for when they're ready to die. So they just get I'm ready to go. They just get a pill in the mail.
Pill in the mail.
Gotcha. So none of this complexity. We just take the pill and then we're done. So totally. Simplify.
Then UPS comes by and picks up the body the next day.
Ah. UPS.
You're way ahead of your time.
I know.
Awesome.
I'm in total agreement with that.
Really?
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
funeral home's out of business.
Yep.
Because
I
they
think
are
you'll-
totally unnecessary.
I think y'all have a budding business here.
Audrey, we have to talk.
Who
All
said
right,
that?
so I'd love to
Me.
hear from some
Me.
folks who
Oh, okay.
haven't shared yet. Anything, what's alive for you? Anything else come alive? Jess, please.
We were discussing how it'll be interesting to go through this bigger process with you and learn more and see. I'm completely ignorant about all of the planning and all of the options and all of the things that I get to determine. And so I think this was good for me to start thinking about, so that as I go through the decision-making process, at the end, see what I have in place and circle back around to, all right, these are my people that can help me to make
I
this
love
happen.
that.
So
Yeah.
I'm not ready to fill in that number 1 and number 2 and number 3 yet, but I've got my ideas to keep in mind as I put other plans into place.
That's really wise. So to be gathering more information, and then as that information fills in some of the gaps, then that's going to be able to help inform the healthcare agent from more context. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I love that. Who else? Any other shares? Christine.
Yes, I had a wonderful conversation with Mary Ann, right? Yeah, yes. And and she brought to light the importance for me now of a death care team. And I thought, because I had always thought in terms of singularity, but it seems that the process of gathering that over the years. I mean, I'm actually looking forward to dying, but not yet. Not yet. And so it was illuminating. And also, I'm taking this course for a dear friend who I believe is dying, and yet here it is, and here I am. And the more literate I can become about dying, the more useful I will be to my family, to everyone. So thank you, Lee. Thank you.
Bravo. I love that. I am looking forward to dying, just not yet. I love that. Any last thoughts? Any last thoughts on Wish One? Any last thoughts on Wish One? Susan.
Sure, I'm off mute. Our conversation, Pam and I were having, raised actually another question probably for both of us is, what takes precedence? If we do 5 wishes, I know I have 4, I've done medical directives and power of attorney with my will, when my husband and I did that. What takes precedence? I mean, if we have all these forms together and, you still have an ambulance come to your house. How do they know if you have a DNR on you and you're not standing by the door waving it in their face, or somebody's not there standing? How do they know not to do anything? I mean, where does this all come in to play? What would happen first, when, where?
Yeah, you may not like this answer. That's a great question, and you may not like this answer. It depends on who you're talking to. And, we're going to get to the DNR next week, but some people even get it tattooed on their chest because it's often not honored. Right? Somebody's in hospice, it's often taped above their bed or taped to the front of the door, like it's a bright yellow document, right? But sometimes it's still not honored. And you might show you the 5 wishes to your healthcare provider, and they might say, I don't like this form, it's too complicated. All I want to know, I want the 1 page, give me the thing, I want to look at it quickly, I don't want to sort through all these pages. So it depends. And the reason I love the 5 wishes is that it helps us get intimate with this process. It helps us have conversations with our loved ones, and it helps guide our loved ones. But the truth is, the healthcare power of attorney form is going to be actually more efficient for our health, like the actual healthcare providers. And so I encourage you to have both. And so this is where it gets complicated. This thing is not unified. It's not standardized, and different people are going to feel comfortable with different forms. And the reason we start with the 5 wishes is because it's super accessible, and it gets into the it humanizes the process, which is, it helps us to be empowered about how we want to move forward with this. So we're going to keep that question that you just had, we're going to keep it alive, and we're going to keep refreshing that over and over and over again, which is, what are these different redundant forms? What are these particular people more likely to want rather than others? Your beloved healthcare agents of your family, whether it's your spouse or your friends, are going to love that you have 5 wishes, because it's going to give them a piece of you, a piece of your heart, a piece of your guidance. Your doctor is like, I don't want all this. Give me the thing. Who's in charge? Who's going to make decisions here? Right? So different forms for different people.
Okay.
I actually had a health provider last week tell me, we will not honor a DNR. Nope, we just don't do that here. I was stunned.
What does that even mean? I don't we won't honor a DNR.
That's what she said.
That doesn't even sound legal to me.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, that sounds crazy.
I didn't push it because they're an osteopathic surgeon, but still, if I have hip replacement surgery and something happens.
I once heard a story of a woman who went in for some kind of leg or foot surgery and had a "do not resuscitate" tattooed on her chest. And the doctor said, well, we'll just put some gauze and tape over that.
Whoa.
Meaning, you're not having a life-threatening surgery. And so, but what she was like, no, the whole point of having a DNR tattooed on my chest is I don't want to be resuscitated. Like, this is what we're talking about. There's a certain framework, way of thinking, paradigm within the medical industry that we have to work hard to overcome if we want something different. And I'm sorry that's the case, but unfortunately, it's often true. So we're going to that's a great segue into wish 2. Everybody's hanging in there. We're an hour and a half in. Take a break if you need it. We're going to go a little longer, and we're going to start talking about wish 2. We can always come back and talk more about wish 1 because it's so important. But let's see. Pam, I see that you're unmuted. Would you be willing to read it's page 6 for me. It says wish 2 at the top of the page. That way.
I gotta find my pages here. I don't have them stapled. Page 6?
That's what it is for me. Does it say wish 2 at the top?
Yes.
Okay, great. Would you read as much of that page as you feel like?
Wish 2, my wish for the kind of medical treatment I want or don't want. I believe that my life is precious and I deserve to be treated with dignity. When the time comes that I am very sick and am not able to speak for myself, I want the following wishes and any other directions I have given to my healthcare agent to be respected and followed. What you should keep in mind as my caregiver. Bullet 1, I do not want to be in pain. I want my doctor to give me enough medicine to relieve my pain, even if that means that I will be drowsy or sleep more than I would otherwise. Next bullet, I do not want anything done or omitted by my doctors or nurses with the intention of taking my life. Next bullet, I want to be offered food and fluids by mouth and kept clean and warm. What, quote, life support treatment, unquote, means to me. Life support treatment means any medical procedure, device, or medication to keep me alive. Life support treatment includes medical devices put in me to help me breathe, food and water supplied by medical device, tube feeding, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, major surgery, blood transfusions, dialysis, antibiotics, and anything else meant to keep me alive. If I wish to limit the meaning of life support treatment because of my religious or personal beliefs, I write this limitation in the space below. I do this to make very clear what I want and under what conditions. In case of an emergency, should I continue?
Yeah, go ahead. You can read that bottom part, sure. Mhm.
In case of an emergency, if you have a medical emergency and ambulance personnel arrive, they may look to see if you have a do not resuscitate form or bracelet. Many states require a person to have a do not resuscitate form filled out and signed by a doctor. This form lets ambulance personnel know that you don't want them to use life support treatment when you are dying. Please check with your doctor to see if you need to have a do not resuscitate form filled out. And I was just speaking with this to Susan. My sister also has a cancer diagnosis, stage 4, and her doctor did provide her with the form and sign it. So because my sister thought that a form she filled out in the hospital would cover her in her assisted living facility where she's at, and her doctor told her no. So so Michigan, we know that Michigan does require this form.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of empathy for particularly emergency and ambulance personnel who are having to, be driven by a lot of adrenaline a lot of the time, right? And who get trained to save people, right? This is the lane that they're driving in. They get trained to save people. They get trained to deal with really sometimes horrendous emergency situations. What they're not trained in is how to be present when someone's dying, right? And so this is like, it's hard to cross lanes, right? How do they show up in a situation and then suddenly they're supposed to not do anything because there's a do not resuscitate order? So these are just things to think about. I have a lot of empathy for that. That's, and somewhat, our hospital systems, almost no one, you'll hear this, almost no one gets trained in hospice or palliative or, end of life or supporting the sacred process of transitioning. That is not what's taught in medical school. So, we have to be mindful of that. It's not a blame so much. It's just more of a that's what they're here to do, is keep us alive. And when we're ready to die, other things need to be put in place. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at page 7. We're going to talk a lot more about life support treatment, but let's just get through at least this form. Let's see, Chris Roth, would you read the top sentence, 2 sentences, and then the ones on the left, the close to death and in a coma?
Okay, here is the kind of medical treatment that I want or don't want in the 4 situations listed below. I want my healthcare agent, my family, my doctors, and other healthcare providers, my friends, and all others to know these directions. So close to death. If my doctor and another healthcare professional both decide that I'm likely to die within a short period of time and life support treatment would only delay the moment of my death, then choose one of the following. I want to have life support treatment, or I do not want life support treatment. If it has been started, I want it stopped. Or I want to have life support treatment if my doctor believes it could help, but I want my doctor to stop giving me life support treatment if it is not helping my health condition or symptoms. And the next one is in a coma and not expected to wake up or recover. My doctor and another healthcare professional both decide that I am in a coma from which I'm not expected to wake up or recover, and I have brain damage and life support treatment would only delay the moment of my death. Choose one of the following. I want to have life support treatment. I do not want life support treatment. If it has been started, I want it stopped. Or I want to have life support treatment if my doctor believes it could help, but I want my doctor to stop giving me life support treatment if it is not helping my health condition or symptoms.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Annie, did you have yours printed out? Do you want to take a turn? I see that you're unmuted.
Sure.
Great.
Sure, yeah. The permanent is where we're starting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Permanent and severe brain damage and not expected to recover. If my doctor and another healthcare professional both decide that I have permanent and severe brain damage, for example, I can open my eyes, but I cannot speak or understand, and I'm not expected to get better, and life support treatment would only delay the moment of my death, choose one of the following. I want to have life support treatment. I do not want life support treatment. If it has been started, I want it stopped. I want to have life support treatment if my doctor believes it could help, but I want my doctor to stop giving me life support treatment if it is not helping my health condition or symptoms. In another condition under which I do not wish to be kept alive. If there is another condition under which I do not wish to have life support treatment, I describe it below. In this condition, I believe that the costs and burdens of life support treatment are too much and not worth the benefits to me. Therefore, in this condition, I do not want life support treatment. For example, you may write end stage condition. That means that your health has gotten worse. You're not able to take care of yourself in any way, mentally or physically. Life support treatment will not help you recover. Sorry, something came up and I couldn't finish that.
Oh, were you reading off the screen? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. No, that's okay. I'll finish. Life support treatment will not help you recover. Please leave the space blank if you have no other condition to describe.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
So you start to see here what Marianne was talking about earlier, which is these different scenarios. And keep in mind that this is a template and not everybody resonates with the language in this template, but the template encourages you to cross out words that you don't resonate with. This idea of if my doctor and another doctor, if you want to rephrase that, rephrase that. They're doing the best they can to serve, 30 million people by trying to come up with this sort of baseline language. But whatever language that doesn't resonate with you, you can rewrite the thing. But life prolonging measures is a very complex and in-depth discussion. Here's a bunch that I listed. They also listed some in these 5 wishes. Feeding tubes and fecal tubes and ventilators and catheters. Even tests can be considered invasive and life supporting. Radiation chemo for sure, pain meds, renal dialysis, hydration, antibiotics, surgeries, CPR, and others. The list is long. So, this is one of those things where some people are pretty black and white about this issue. Some people feel like nothing. I'm okay with death. I really want nothing. Some people are on the other end of the spectrum where they're like, give me everything, do whatever you can. And then some people are wanting to do more research and be more specific about what they want. So anything you want to choose along that spectrum is perfectly okay. What I think some of us learn over time is that some of these life support, life prolonging measures can be quite invasive. And especially like these CPRs, resuscitation things, ventilator for sure. There's a great Radiolab episode that they interviewed they interviewed a bunch of doctors, and 9 out of 10 of them said, I want nothing, no life prolonging measures except for pain support. And so that's indicative, right, of like how intense it can be to have these life prolonging measures. So this is a spiritual question as well as a physical question, and something that, you can research and think about. Any thoughts from right now on these life supporting measures? You can take a screenshot of this. Again, this is not a comprehensive list, but it's a good set of things that sometimes happens at the end of life. Annie, go ahead.
Yeah, what occurs to me is it might be good to write in there, for me anyway, something like, if not all of these family members have arrived before I pass, if my healthcare director agrees, please, agent, please keep me alive until they can say goodbye. That's also a thing I know that kind of just happens naturally, right? I've seen it happen naturally, but it might be something someone would want to write in.
Yeah, it's true. And which one specifically? Like for me personally, I wouldn't submit to some kind of CPR or resuscitation or ventilator, no matter who was not there. But other things potentially, what's reasonable for me? I think those are great questions.
Right.
Other thoughts about life prolonging measures? Audrey, you're muted, love. Now finding that dang mute button is always there you go.
My one of the things that is a side consequence of this discussion is when someone does do a life-saving measure to save you, and it saves you, but it doesn't actually repair everything. For example, my brother had some problem and they had to give him emergency tracheotomy, which were bad. And so he's now on a permanent feeding tube. And so the thing is, I guess it's like you have to measure the life-saving things that they try to apply versus, for the rest of his life, he's on this tube.
Yeah. Woof. Yeah. Big stuff. Big heartbreaking stuff. Thank you. That's a hard one.
Anyway, it's just something to think about.
Yeah. What else? What else is alive for people around this? Chris and then Phyllis.
Yeah, I mean, to me, when I saw hydration on there, the hydration could be supplied by an IV, tube. And that is a whole different category from some of those other things, like for me, or pain meds. And pain meds is kind of tricky too, because I know I had a kidney stone like quite a while ago. It was intensely painful till I got it removed, but I didn't like too much pain meds because I got all blurry, but there was just this perfect point where I would take it again. So I don't know, there's so many nuances here.
So important what you're saying, that there's a far cry from some of these, some of these measures to other ones. And yet some people have, you know, a religious belief around IVs or whatever. And then other people are like, hydration's a no-brainer, like, of course, you know. So, you know, yes, this is such an individual choice. And I appreciate what you're saying about pain. And Stephen Jenkinson, who wrote a book called Die Wise and has also been on done a film called Grief Walker, you know, he has a radical notion, which is pain. We don't want to dull all the pain, because pain is part of the process. Pain is part of what we're being intimate with, which is a very radical notion. It was hospice is about no breakthrough pain, right? Giving enough morphine so that there's never breakthrough pain, because then you're on this seesaw up and down of pain. So there's some different pain philosophies out there. And I love what you're saying, which is, you know, there was a sweet spot for me, and I didn't want to be so dulled out that I wasn't aware, but I wanted to be not howling in pain. So, you know, and the hospice perspective is sort of a one size fits all perspective. So then how do we navigate that with our caretakers? These are beautiful, beautiful questions. And often if you know, if one is at home, that the caregivers have a lot of autonomy and agency around how the pain meds get given. And so being clear about that ahead of time might be helpful for really, you know, a guiding light for your caregivers. So really good questions. Phyllis.
I had one thought and now I've got two, but the one is that if you're checking the third box in any of these, I want my doctor if it's not helping. I mean, that is so such a difficult, how it would depend on how your doctor thinks, you know. Anybody who's watched Grey's Anatomy knows that they could have conflicting ideas about what's helping and what isn't.
Yeah.
So that, you know, checking that box, you might have to add extra, you know, directions or something. But the other thing I was thinking after what Chris said is that, you know, I'm thinking, of course, of giving birth and this decision of whether or not you want a spinal block so you don't feel any pain you're giving birth, or do you want to say, you know, I gave birth without so much as an aspirin, and, you know, is it painful? Yes, it surely is. But then you kind of forget the pain after the baby's there. I don't know if you really forget it, but I think you do forget it on some level. And then, so what happens after you die, you probably aren't remembering the actual pain anymore.
Yeah.
So that was all that came to me. That was interesting.
Yeah, I love the parallel with birth. I think there's so much parallel, so much mystery, so much beauty in that parallel. And, you know, I hear you on the third choice that there's so many variables there, like it's almost meaningless in a way. And what if you crossed out, I want to have, you would say, I want to have life support treatment if my healthcare agent believes it could help, right? I mean, that's an interesting choice to say instead of doctor. I mean, there's so many different ways to phrase that. So again, you know, we're trying to take the big wide world of what could possibly happen and narrow some things down. And it goes back to that, like, in one hand, we describe and define the thing that's our ideal. And then on the other hand, we might just have to surrender to what we get, because we may not have any control, any influence. And this is part of the internal preparation for death, is to be able to be in the mystery of it all. And, you know, ideally trust that there's some divine orchestration, you know, of our soul and what's happening in our end of life. So, yeah. Other thoughts here? Great. Good. Take a breath with me. Y'all are doing great, hanging in there. This is big stuff. Really big stuff. So we're working our way towards a break, and I want to go through my website page of resources briefly, and also introduce the Go Wish game. So let me do a little share here. I think this is gonna get my screen in the right way. Okay. Minimize this and maximize this and minimize this. I believe you all can see my webpage that says end of life resources. Is that true? Can you see that now? Okay, great. Okay, so this is got a lot on it, and it can be a little overwhelming, but I'm going to try to break it down a little bit for you. So there's this thing in blue is sort of a repeat of what I sent you in an email, which is these are the most important things for you to print out. But there's lots of resources on here. So it starts here at the top of the white section with the 5 wishes, and there's several ways to get them. You all have whatever you're working with now, which is great. The addendum to the 5 wishes we're going to talk about a little later today. And this is my personal addendum, which I actually have to update. I've had my own procrastination issues with paperwork, so you're not alone. You won't be alone. But you are so welcome to use my addendum, take from it what you will, make it into your own words, choose what you want. People find this very, very helpful. And I've done that with other people's addendums, so you're welcome to it. The end of life checklist is there in different formats that you can print out and use. The Go Wish cards, which I'm going to explain in just a minute. The healthcare power of attorney. A lot of this is for North Carolina stuff because I just don't have every state listed on here, but you can do a Google search. The support for end of life, which we're going to talk a little bit about. The patient advocate, Karen Sanders, is going to be with us after break. And some other end of life resources, death doula directories, and then these specific medical orders, which we're going to talk about next time, this HIPAA stuff, death certificate, a dementia directives, an evaluation for this class. And then we get into this whole disposition of body thing, which we're going to talk about at length next time. Lots and lots of choices. This is really awesome to talk about. Some financial resources. And then under here, under general resources, we have like that Facebook page I told you about, and a Flickr photo album of her dying process. Let's see some other Western North Carolina resources, some books, some videos. You'll see the Radiolab episode that I just mentioned. It's called The Bitter End on medical doctors and their end of life choices. Fascinating podcast. Some websites, really cool websites, some articles, and then there's at the very bottom here some resources for final exit choices. It used to be called the Hemlock Society, voluntary stopping of eating and drinking choices, and this dignified death option. We don't have a lot of options in our culture for assisted support for end of life, which is a shame, and we really need to get more literate about that. But there are some resources here. Okay, so I'm gonna walk through with you this Go Wish card thing. So I'm gonna click on this online exercise. I can also put this link in the chat. I'm gonna do that right now so you have access to it. So it's going to actually bring up this website, and you can do the Go Wish game right here online. And I'm going to show you how to do it. So you'll see that there's a deck of cards up here. And when I click on it, it's going to flip over a card. And then when I scroll down, it has 3 sections. The section at the top is called Very Important. The section in the middle is called Somewhat Important. And the section at the bottom is called Not Important. You can also buy a deck of these cards, and I love them so much. And it's a great way to talk to family and friends. So there's also a link on my site to go ahead and buy these cards. They're super affordable and they're really helpful. So the way to do this is I click on, and it's going to talk at me. So it's going to sound weird for a minute because it actually has this audio component. So I'm going to click on this deck and it's going to flip a card over.
To have my financial affairs in order.
to have my financial affairs in order. So then I'm going to go to the section that I think is where I want this one. Very important, somewhat important, or not important. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to click on that box and it's going to move it. Then I'm going to go here and click on the deck again.
Not dying alone.
And I'm going to click down here under not important. And then I'm going to keep clicking on
To
the
die at home.
keep clicking on the deck and putting these cards in the sections that I want them. If I want to restart or clear this session, I can hit this button over here and it restarts it. And I can also print it when I'm done with it. So if that's all a little too much to do on break, that's okay. You can do it on your own time. But for those of you who might be computer savvy or who might want to take the time, it's actually a really sweet game to continue to help inform this conversation about what's important to us. And you might actually be surprised about what's important to you. And you would certainly be surprised about what's important to other people in your life. We tend to project onto other people what we think is important. And I did this game with my mom and she chose, I don't know, I took a picture of it and printed it out, but she chose her top 4 as ones that I would never have chosen for myself. It's really helpful for me to play that game with someone else to realize like, oh, people have really different priorities about what's important to them. So why don't you go ahead and take, let's do a 25-minute break and get up, stretch, eat, pee, whatever you need to do. And if you feel for doing this game, that would be lovely and ideal, and we can talk a little bit about it. And if not, don't pressure yourself on it. So let's come back at, I guess we could do close to, let's come back at, what is it, 4:23. Let's say 4:23. It's an odd number, but we'll come back then. And if you mute yourself and you stop your video, you can just stay logged into Zoom. Or if you get off, I'll just let you back in. Welcome back. I'm going to read y'all a little poem from Marcus Aurelius. Even if you're going to live 3,000 more years or 10 times that. Hold on one second. Let Marianne back in. All right, let me start over. Even if you're going to live 3,000 more years or 10 times that, remember, you cannot lose another life than the one you're living now, or live another one than the one you're losing. The longest amounts to the same as the shortest. The present is the same for everyone. Its loss is the same for everyone. And it should be clear that a brief instant is all that is lost. For you can't lose either the past or the future. How could you lose what you don't have? So welcome back. I'm interested to hear from those of you who played the Go Wish game. How was that? What did you learn? Some folks I haven't heard from today that I'd be interested in hearing from are Cynthia, Teresa, Margie, Naomi, I think is in a place where she can speak, Annie P. Margie, do you want to share?
Excuse me. Yes, I had so many that I wanted to put in the top category. I ran out of space. So but I continued the exercise, and it was just a lot of it was thought provoking. But I had real strong feelings initially about each one. It's like, yes, this belongs here, and this belongs here. But there were a couple that I wasn't quite sure, like, do I want to die alone? It's like, well, I don't know. It's, again, like someone mentioned about birth, you know, you think maybe you want your friends or your partner with you, but then in the moment, it's hard to know. So that one's like, well, jury's out.
Yeah. You know, they limit the very important category for a reason. Because, you know, the three piles are there, right? Or when you're playing with the actual deck of cards, you can put them in three piles. And then one of the interesting ways to play the game is to play it with a group or with another person. And then there's different scenarios like, oh, you know, you're suddenly in a car accident with your healthcare agent, pick two or pick one. So the trick with the Go Wish game is to continue to think about what are your top, you know, limited amount, what are your top three, what are your top four? Anybody else want to comment on the Go Wish game? Cynthia, please.
Like Margie, I was moving mine all around, you know, and the Go Wild card was fun, you know, to put something in there. And yeah, I really like that game. And that I was really clear about a lot of it, you know, but then because that box was so, I mean, the top one, the very important. So I did end up moving things around, but it was pretty, I was happy the ones that I was clear about and was able to keep them in their spot.
And it would be interesting to print it out and date it and then do it again, because it's interesting to know, you know, how important things are or if they change. Really, and it did change based on the mood or, you know, what's going on in life. So great. Who else did the Go Wish game wants to share? Teresa.
There we go. Yes, I played it very, very, very quickly. And I ran out of space on the top line and I started moving around. So I had similar experience. But I like it because it helps clarify and you get to know, you know, more about yourself, you know, what's important to you. So I'm going to have to play this again.
Yeah, it's fun. It's for sure fun. All right, so welcome, Karen. So thank you so much. I'm making you a co-host right now. And
thank you.
So what we've done today is just done a bit of an overview, and we've also spent a bunch of time with Wish 1 and Wish 2, the 5 wishes, which is the healthcare agent conversation and the and the what we want, the life prolonging measures that we want or don't want. And often what comes up in this class is when people say, oh, I don't know if there's someone I can choose, or I'm not near anyone, or I don't have that kind of close relationship, or I don't know what I want for end of life. And so this dovetails beautifully into your introduction. And I'm myself just learning about patient advocacy. So for you to share a little bit with us about the whole world of patient advocacy and introducing us to that. So thank you so much for being here.
Sure thing. Thank you. It's so good to be here with you all. So I'm going to do a very a big blitz in a 30-minute period of time. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and I am going to share a PowerPoint with you. So let's see. I was with a patient recently who requested to be cremated, and she's a very young patient, but she's got a terminal disease. So I talked to a female funeral director in Hendersonville who referred me to this place, which is called Wells Funeral Home and Crematory. And some of you who've lived in Asheville a long time know that Forest Lawn Memorial Park is one of the oldest cemeteries in the region. And I'm sitting up here in the office and I'm looking out at the space, and you could see our beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains and this pastoral place. So I thought, what a picture. So just a little bit about me. I have about 45 years of nursing leadership and education experience, been in a variety of settings, and I've been in private practice for 7 years as an RN patient advocate. Why did I choose this? Because I grew up in a catastrophic family system with my mother and my sister diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia early. And so that caused me and my siblings all to have catastrophic experiences with homelessness and not enough money and not enough food. So I had guides and angels to help me get through all that. And now, many years later, my passion is to give back, teaching patients and families and students how to do this work. My other passions are forest bathing, hiking, and taking nature photos. And I also facilitate the Death Cafe at Ollie on the third Friday of the month. My training is I got a BS degree in nursing from Old Dominion University in Norfolk and a Master of Science degree from Chapel Hill. And I have certifications in advanced holistic nursing and health and wellness. Okay, so what is an advocate? Is a person who stands up and calls out to speak to another person about an issue. And when you are an advocate, you don't really know how this is all going to turn out. But if we don't speak up, someone else is going to be possibly making the decisions for you. Usually there's always encouragement for an advocate before, during, or after one speaks up. And also to remember that our tools are the words that we speak. And so what is an advocate? So they are the public face for someone who can't speak up. They help communicate for the patient or family. We usually know the patients very well. If somebody has an advocate usually has people management skills, respectful, make friends, they're extroverted, tend to be. They're not afraid to ask questions or cool under pressure. They adapt to change, they're organized, and they can meet with physicians and not feel intimidated. So what is a patient care advocate? So there's advocates, then there's patient advocates, and it's someone who is a caregiver for self or family who stands up and speaks up for the patient or family to help negotiate with physicians, hospitals, healthcare providers, or insurance companies. So what is an RN patient advocate? So drilling down a little bit more, we help patients and families navigate the dysfunctional, silo-driven, technologically difficult healthcare system with less stress and more peace of mind. We generally have, or we should have, more than 10 years of nursing experience. We should have a license for the state of North Carolina with the Board of Nursing. We should be a graduate of an accredited school of nursing, be it associate's degree, baccalaureate, master's, and we should know our community with 10 years or more experience, and we should have excellent reference. So when you choose an advocate, you should consider 4 things: their education, their experience, their community, and their references. So their education, a graduate of an accredited program in healthcare, that could be not only nursing, but pharmacy or lab or radiology, at least 10 years experience, because there are a lot of persons out there with 2 or 3 years experience, but they have their judgment and their wisdom has not been tested with lots of different patient care experiences. They could also be working in hospitals, clinics, or outpatients, and they really need to work in the region. I really prefer, I'd like for you, if I'm going to hire you, I'd want you to have at least 10 years experience or more, because I want you to have a big fat contact list to be able to refer people, other caregivers to you, and good references. So I'm going to talk briefly about the setting of healthcare. And there's this book called Undoctored, which I strongly recommend if you want to get into the weeds about the characteristics of our dysfunctional healthcare system. But bottom line, our healthcare system really addresses illness, but doesn't focus on health. And I'm telling you all this, and you already know it. And this is a quote: "Would you buy a car from someone who was intimidating, raised your prices, refused to answer your questions, brushed off your concerns, and had a total disregard for customer satisfaction? Why do we put up with this in healthcare? Why do we accept physicians being rude to us? Why do we have hospital systems that don't answer our car lights? Why do we have hospital systems or healthcare systems that refuse to help us with our patient billing?" And this is from Undoctored. It was written by a cardiac surgeon named William Davis. And he says something that's really true. Health is something achieved through individual effort and nothing to do with doctors or healthcare systems. And then some other characteristics of healthcare is that we can go to the Google and we can Google anything about from any disease or disability, and it's widely accessible to everyone, but no human being can keep up with this at any way. And that now the metric is there's approximately 6,000 articles on healthcare published every day. Who in this world can keep up with that? And just to say that medical errors are one of the leading causes of death, and that the way we circumvent that is we need more patient involvement, more family involvement in identifying harmful events and participating in that. And so in this book by, hold on a minute, my husband's laughing, sorry about that. Hey, Greg, I'm on a Zoom. He's going back out to the porch, okay? So
it's actually hard to hear him, so I wouldn't worry about it.
Oh, good. So this physician named Ofri wrote a book called When We Do Harm, A Doctor Confronts Medical Error. And there's some really key wisdom sentences here. And that when you are facing a crisis in the healthcare system, the most critical safety feature is the presence of another person. So that could be a family member, a friend, or an advocate. It's simply too much chaos for someone who's acutely ill to confront bulldozing level medical treatments or the intricacies of healthcare without having someone else to listen, and better yet, being eyes and ears and keep a notebook or a camera at the bedside to write down and ask every single thing that transpires. So that's what the diagnosis, what's the medication for, what are the side effects, what are today's blood tests, who is this person in a white coat coming into my room, who are these people? So I thought I would show you the top 10 reasons why people call me. And I'm not going to answer any of these questions except for maybe the 3 that I have highlighted. So number 1, I probably get more questions from people who are hospitalized. Number 2, what's the difference between home care and home health? I'm in the hospital. They want to send me to a rehab facility. How do I choose one? They have already chosen one. And is it a good one? A key question I get asked over and over and over again: what is the difference between palliative care and hospice care? Lee, are you covering that in this course?
We will touch on it. Yeah.
Okay. So one of my colleagues, a lot of you already know her, is Dr. Aditi Sethi Brown and Greg Lathrop, my husband, and they do a class teaching I have a school called the Holistic Oriented Patient Advocacy Training Institute where I'm training nurses to do my work. And they both do a great 2-hour seminar on the differences between palliative care and hospice care. And then number 5 is, when I am in hospice, will hospice pay for all of my care 24/7? That's a biggie. The answer is no, they don't. When you're admitted to hospice with different criteria, they will pay for one nurse to come in 1 to 2 hours a week and one CNA, 1 to 2 hours a week just for housekeeping or whatever. So that is a big issue. Number 6, I'm in a skilled or assisted living facility. The nursing staff's ignoring me. Who do I get to call me or to help me? I want to go to another facility. We have something called Buncombe County Ombudsman, which is a federal program. Every county in the United States should have one of those, and they are persons that are trained to go into facilities and interview patients and staff about the complaints about patients. Number 7, I had a terrible experience while I was in the hospital. I want to get my medical records, but I don't know how to get them. Can you help me? Number 8, I cut my finger. I went to the emergency room to have stitches. They charged me $4,000 for one procedure. How do I now appeal this? I've been placed in collections and I am 100% charity care. Number 9, this is a biggie. Is staying at home while I die or at the end of my life cheaper than living at a facility? Can you tell me about home managers, since I'm living all alone, who can stay with me 24/7 when I am at the end of my life with no family or friends? And I think Lee's going to talk about the dying, or you're going to have a dying doula come and speak, and there's a big dying doula community. There's also patient advocates who are into the dying process, who are RNs. And the last one is, which Medicare plan should I choose? Part A, Part B, Part C, or Part D? So just to show you what the top 10 questions are, there's actually about the top 100, but I didn't want to bore you to death, so I'm just giving you 10. So I want to talk a little bit about the forms that people need to know about when you are thinking about, or when you have a dying diagnosis, or you're suffering from a terrible illness. What are some of the forms that you need to consider or to have your advocate? One of them is called the Authorization for Disclosure of Health Information. There's always a lot of confusion about what's happening to a person's body physiologically and pathophysiologically when they enter the phase at the end of their life. And so there's something called an Authorization for Disclosure of Health Information that the patient fills out and or delegates to whoever might be a family member or friend. So it's down here, they fill this out and date of services requested. So let's say you would like to get a year's worth of medical records from a physician office or maybe from the hospital. And then the patient signature here down the bottom and the signature of the patient representative. This is just a generic form. This is the gnarly Mission Hospital Authorization for Release of Medical Information, Healthcare Information. You'll see it. Authorization for access, use, or disclosure of protected health information. This is the gnarliest, this would be the gnarliest form that I've seen in this region. And they write, do not write in the margin, do not write in the margin. But I always write in the margin, I want a paper chart. I don't want you to give me DVDs or CDs that's going to take me hours to understand your application. I want it in paper. So the good news is, if you've been in the hospital just for a few days, a paper chart would be key. If you've been in the hospital for weeks, you might get 10,000 pages. So, but it is the total source of truth on any patient is to look at their medical record. And that's important for families trying to work with patients who are in the dying phase or getting ready to go through a dying phase, or just critically ill, what's going on with the patient. Sometimes you have so many consultants and doctors, and they are only giving you a little snapshot of their service. Another form that's important is the do not resuscitate form. Lee, are you all reviewing this form? Okay, good. I won't spend any time with it. Are you all reviewing the MOST form?
Yeah, but I'd like your take on it. I mean, I'm always an advocate for redundancy and especially a one-page fluorescent colored form. And so I'd love your perspective on it.
Sure. So every state in the United States has a medical orders for scope of treatment form. Another way it's called, ours is called MOST in North Carolina. A lot of states have a POLST, physician orders for list of treatment or standard treatment, POLST. So in North Carolina, our form is pink, and you can only get it from a physician office. You can't get these off the internet. And I actually took a picture of this. It has 5 questions on it. And this is now any of you who are young and you're really, really healthy, or you might be elders and you might be really, really healthy. However, these are 5 questions to answer and have your physician to sign as you approach the end of your life. So I've cut this in 2, so we'll do three questions, 3 for the first side and 2 for the next. The first one is cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Do you want attempts at resuscitation or no attempts? Yes or no? Secondly, medical informations or intervention. Person has a pulse and or is breathing. Full scope of treatment, yes or no? You want intubation, advanced airway intervention, mechanical ventilation. That means a nasotracheal tube, cardioversion, or indicated medical treatment, IVs, comfort measures, transfer to the hospital. Or do you want limited in additional intervention? That would be IV fluids, cardiac monitor, no intubation or mechanical ventilation, and transfer to hospital if indicated. Avoid intensive care. Or 3, you want comfort measures, keep warm, keep dry, keep clean, use medication by any route, positioning, wound care, other measures, do not transfer to the hospital.
And so just let me just translate this. We just got finished with Wish 2, and this is a much more detailed, broken down piece, which was sort of speaking to Chris's thing, which is hydration is a whole different world from CPR. So this form is a redundancy. You know, you can have your 5 wishes, Wish 2, but then this gets very specific. So
and indeed, when you're in the hospital or working for healthcare professionals, a 5 wishes form is helpful, but it doesn't give healthcare providers a lot of direction. So this form is extremely anal retentive in terms of the questions we need to ask. And I can't tell you how many times I get called in on a case and a patient is dying and the family can't decide if they're going to intubate the patient or not. What does the patient want to do while they're unconscious? So these are the key questions that come in handy. The last 2 questions on this form actually are antibiotics. Do you want to be put on antibiotics? Do you want antibiotics if life can be prolonged? Yes or no? Do you want to determine use or limitation of antibiotics when infection occurs? Yes or no? Or no antibiotics, okay? Section D is medically administered fluids and nutrition, which could be offering oral fluids and nutrition. So it might be IV fluids long-term if indicated, IV fluids for a defined trial period, no IV fluids. And then the other side is that about feeding tubes, feeding tube long-term if needed, feeding tube for a defined trial period, or no feeding tubes. So for me, right now, Karen Sanders, I'm healthy. I want everything done right now. However, let's say I have a stroke and I have right-sided paralysis and I can't swallow anymore. I would redo this form and have my physician sign it because I would change these choices, for example. The last part of this is you'll see section E, discuss with and agreed by patient, parent, healthcare attorney, spouse, majority. And then you'll see that it has to be signed by an MD, a DO, a PO, a PA, a nurse practitioner, a signature, and a phone number, and then the person's name and their representative. So this is called, in North Carolina, MOST, most form, okay? So I'm going to go on to the next thing, and that would be healthcare power of attorney. So what are your wishes at the end of your life? Lee, are you all talking about that also?
Yeah, I mean, maybe put this aside for now because the 5 wishes is our entry into this work, partly because it's an intimate document and it's empowering and it's human and relatable. And I am, it is wish 1. Healthcare power of attorney is what the 5 wishes called the healthcare agent. And I do talk about next week that we want something that's more recognized by medical practitioners, which is this form. So let's put this one aside for now because we'll talk about it next week.
Great. So then the last slide I have here is to go ahead and go to the bank and identify the person that you want to have payable to death account. So let's say you have a daughter and your spouse or partner has died. And if you die without payable to death account by the bank, it will take a lot of effort on the part of your child to get access to your bank account. They'll have to have a death certificate or whatever else documentation the bank will require. So actually, my husband and I just did this a few weeks ago. So I am his payable to death account and he is mine. And then there's another thing called joint with survivorship checking accounts. And that would be, so suppose I'm in a car accident and I have a huge stroke and I am unable to verbalize, and I would be unable to write checks and take care of my part of the household. So this is an important document also to get signed in the event that something happens to you, not that you would die, but that you would be unable to have your partner, whoever, access to your bank accounts.
Yeah, we're going to go in depth in finances next week. I think the big questions for you, Karen, are around how can you imagine someone using a patient advocate such as yourself during the dying process? Like if I didn't have friends or a family member and I wanted to put you on my 5 wishes as my healthcare agent, is that appropriate? And then how and when would we start working together? What would that look like for me?
So I would say that it all varies by what each patient or client wants. Some clients want me to be the manager of a healthcare team in a home, for example. They want me to just maybe assist with maybe looking at the patient's care from a third party. Are they getting all of their medications and nutrition and hydration, turning, other components? Or somebody might want me to come to the hospital bedside while someone is in the hospital and they're dying and they just want me to be a second set of eyes. Or are they unnaturally or precipitously saying my patient, my loved one is going into hospice when I don't think they need to be? So it's really, really, really individualized. Some people want all of these things done that I've just talked about when the patient is comatose. So it makes it really hard on a patient spouse, for example, if the patient is comatose and they want access to all of their bank accounts, and it becomes a nightmare, as you all probably know. So I would just say it depends. It just really depends. But that's why I gave you the top 10 questions why people people want to employ me, and especially those 3 areas that I talked about where they want to know my husband has got end-stage heart failure and he can hardly walk. He's on nasal oxygen at home and there's no hope of him getting any better. And then I say, well, have you talked about palliative care? Has your physician talked to you? No, they haven't spoken to me about palliative care. What's palliative care? So we talk about that, or we talk about if they've really got a terminal diagnosis, have you thought about hospice care? So that question gets asked over and over and over again, as do the financial issues with checking accounts and those kinds of things. Does that answer your question, Lee?
So I'm hearing that you can end up being a catch-all for some families because they've done none of this. And so they're like, we're drowning, help us with everything. And then there's some situations where you can actually build a relationship ahead of time. Someone uses you as their primary healthcare agent and you're getting to know them while they're healthy and then maybe into the phases where they're declining and dying. And that actually is a way easier transition. But it just really depends on the situation and the family. But patient advocacy, not everybody here is in the state of North Carolina, but I think what I'm learning, and I think probably all of us are learning, is that patient advocacy is a really valid choice for folks, even if they have a family member as a designated healthcare agent. A patient advocate can really help that family by informing them of some of the medical things they know nothing about.
Correct. That's exactly correct.
Right.
And I do have a number of patients who hire me. They're perfectly fine. They're well, they're healthy, but they employ me just in case. So it's a whole, it's a whole different timeline about what people
And you can also inform people if there's going to be life prolonging measures about what the pros and cons of each of those things are before they make the choices. So, hey, the doctor's recommending we do this, this, and this. Can you talk to us about the pros and cons of these things for my beloved?
That's exactly right. So, for example, I had a patient that fell in the bathroom who was perfectly fine. And when she fell in her bathroom on her tile floor, she broke her hip. So she called me at 10 o'clock at night. And then the next 2 days, she had her surgery the next day. And then she said, would you please come to the hospital and explain to me what in the world is going on here? I don't understand what happened to me. So in that case, I went to her bedside. I have mayoclinic.org on my phone. It's an app. It's a great patient education app. And I asked the nurse to bring the computer on wheels into the room, read out the OR note by the surgeon, who explained the device that the patient had implanted in their fractured femur. And then I looked up the device on my phone and showed her what it looked like inside her femur. So that's what I mean. It just depends on what people want. I try to meet them wherever they are.
Right. Awesome. This is so helpful. And I noticed a couple of hands. Are you open to a couple of questions?
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. Cynthia, go ahead.
I can see where this would be very, very valuable. I know for me, I really don't have any family that, can be a part of my healthcare, hospitalization stuff. So what is the fee, if you request a patient advocate, a nurse patient advocate, how does that get paid for?
So this is not covered by Medicare yet. In the state of North Carolina, we have a quirky law that says advanced practice nurses, nurse practitioners, midwives cannot function independently unless you're supervised by a physician, but that doesn't keep us from operating from private practice. So we are all, I'm private pay.
Okay.
My fee is $100 an hour. My first hour is free consultation. If the family doesn't have money, I ask them if they want a sliding scale or do they want to give me a donation. So that's how that
Okay.
works.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
And so it'd be worth putting money aside if that's the plan. I mean, everything costs something, but you know,
Yeah.
if one is going to go with a patient advocate, it'd be good to have an account, you know, for that service. That's really helpful. Thank you, Karen.
Oh, sorry, one more
thing.
thing. And how do we find you or the women, excuse me, that you're training?
So my website the website that I just showed you has
Oh.
Karen Sanders listed there specifically, so you
Okay.
can find Karen that way. And Karen, if you also want to go ahead and put your website in the chat box, people can get
Sure.
you there. And then
Okay.
if you're in
Sure.
a different state or region, you're going to do some research, and it's called patient advocacy or RN patient advocate. And do some interviewing and use those criteria, you know, those things you should be looking for that Karen started with.
So
Thank you.
there are 4 national listservs where you can go find a patient, an RN patient or a patient advocate. And I could probably send those to Lee so she could give them to you. But if you're living, let's say you're living here, but you have an aunt who's dying in California. So I have to be careful. I can't give another patient care in another state. So I would then refer you, I would look up that state for you and give you a few names of patient advocates that are located in California or Idaho, Oklahoma, wherever.
Wonderful.
I'm putting in my website and I'm putting in my my cell number.
Excellent. I see Christine and Chris. Go ahead, Christine.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Christine.
Hi. It's so good to see you. I know Karen. I was lucky. I am lucky enough to have long-term health care. Only got it a few years ago. I'm 76. I didn't know a thing about it. I'm just telling everyone if they are interested. I think it's very, very helpful. And I'm curious, can I get a patient advocate even with long-term health care if I need one?
I don't, in this state, not yet. But maybe we could, we could just talk and see what your long-term healthcare insurance is. But so far, I don't think so. But we could talk, Christine.
Okay. Thanks, Karen.
You're welcome.
The Stone Ages, I tell you what, we're in the Stone Ages.
Yes, we are.
All right, Chris Roth.
Yeah, you said that you would fill out the most form in a certain way right now, but then if something serious happened to you, you would go in and change it. I guess my
Correct.
question is, what if something serious happened to you that made it so you can't actually fill out a new form? Is there a way to have a backup form that is in the case of this, then you use this form?
So that's where, when we have, we've worked with an attorney to develop all of those backup things in case I become incapacitated, then Greg becomes my healthcare agent. So those are the kinds of things where an attorney kind of helps you in regard to that kind of thing, since I would be incapacitated at that point in time.
Yeah, and also the 5 wishes can help. Anyway, we can talk more about the most form next week. Other patient advocate specific questions. Who else? Any last questions? Awesome. Karen, this was awesome. So grateful to you. So grateful.
All righty. Godspeed to you. Glad
Thank
you all are
you.
taking this course.
you.
Bye-bye. Take
Thank you,
care.
Karen.
Bye, bye, bye.
Oh, that was great. So this is new on my radar too, this idea of the patient advocate for the primary healthcare agent or as a support for the healthcare team or the healthcare agent, right? What an incredible support. And as we look back at those characteristics of the healthcare agent, this could cover a lot of bases where your healthcare agent might not need to, like the being fierce with medical institutions or the knowledge about medical terminology. So if your healthcare agent doesn't have those things, you could partner with a patient advocate that could sort of fill in those gaps. And as you know, $100 an hour seems reasonable for that kind of thing. But if you're going to need that as an ongoing service, that could really add up. So, you know, budget and plan accordingly with regards to that. And what a beautiful, you know, there's similarities to me in the idea of the midwife, right? That this person could be along the journey, right? You could get to know them when you're healthy. You could be touching base with them. You could build a real relationship with them. So what a beautiful thing. Any other thoughts or comments or integration points about patient advocacy?
Did she say something about doing a course at Ollie once a month?
She talked about her husband, Greg, and Aditi doing a course at Ollie. And I'm curious about what exactly it is. But does everybody know what Ollie is? It's called Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, and it's sort of like all across the country, usually associated with a university or college. And it's for education for folks who are 50 and older. So it's sort of affordable continuing education, and has a lot of courses that are geared towards folks in the older years, everything from travel to bird watching to end of life stuff, and usually has a catalog for a spring semester, fall semester, sometimes summer semester, really, really affordable, accessible courses. So OLLI, O-L-L-I, it stands for Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. So there's one here in Asheville at the University of North Carolina, UNCA. But if you're not in this region, you can do a search online for OLLI in your region. And sometimes they have online stuff too.
Lee, can I just speak to what Audrey? Audrey, I think that it's at the third Friday of every month. It's called the Death Cafe.
Oh,
This is
right.
not really.
Okay, that's what
course.
it was. It was
It's a-
something catchy.
Yeah, I've
Made
attended
you
it
want to
once.
go, but you wonder.
Right.
Yeah, well, it's not about just death. It's about loss of any kind. I've been only once, and it was really amazing when we were in small groups and we talked about our losses. It was lovely. Anyway.
Right, it's right. Thank you for that. It's Karen and Saeed Oso, who are doing the Death Cafe every third Friday. Right. I think that's right, Christine. Thank you. At like 5 or 5:30. And then you can tune in, it's online. And what the Death Cafe is they break you down into small groups, and the topic is death. And then your small group just navigates the conversation however they do. There's no other structure besides that. So beautiful opportunity to talk about death.
Okay, thank you.
Other thoughts about that? How's everybody doing?
She had a lot of information to say in a short time.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the financial stuff and the most stuff, so it's a little bit redundant. But that's great. It's great to get other input and other perspectives. I'm going to actually turn our attention to the Fit 5 Wishes addendum right now. So I'm going to share my screen. You know what? I might just like. Trying to think if I'm gonna do it this way or another way. I think I'm gonna do it another way. So give me a second. Okay. So this is my addendum to my 5 wishes. And again, you know, she really, because she brought the most forum up, the healthcare industry and the people in it are going to want really succinct, clear, specific medical orders like she's talking about. But your family and your loved ones and your healthcare agent are going to want more of the heart and soul of what you wanted at the end of your life. And so I have created an addendum, which you can have access to, like I showed you on my website. And I go through wish 1, wish 2, wish 3, wish 4, and wish 5 with additional thoughts that I have about what I want. And so, so this wish 1, I talk about how I want the death care team and what that looks like. And, you know, decisions about my care to be from other healthcare providers, and feel free to get input from a holistic range of places. And then my wish 2, I wrote things like, I wish to be placed in hospice care as soon as possible. I want to have non-pharmacological attempts at pain control before medications. And those can include guided imagery, music, spiritual readings. It can also include medical marijuana and other things that can be prescribed or gotten in certain states. If I am unresponsive, I believe that I will be able to hear be able to hear outside of me and hear guidance. Do not assume that I am in pain. Administer pain if I show signs of pain. And then I talk a little bit about hallucinations and how they're natural and important part of the process. Sometimes what happens with, and specifically with wish 2, is that the people caring for those dying have a really low threshold around their comfort with death. And so they start giving pain medications because they're anxious, right? So this is another piece for me to find death care, healthcare agents that are really comfortable with death and can really be in that nuanced space. They're okay with a little bit of pain, they're okay with the dying process, and so they're able to make decisions and choices that are more holistic and nuanced. And we're going to cover wish 3, wish 4, and wish 5 next week, so I'm not going to go into the pieces there on the addendum. But my point with the addendum is to elaborate on who you are and what you care about and what you want in this addendum, because this is really going to be mostly guiding the people close to you and your hired patient advocate. And it's really important, the things that are important to you. I get into much more specifics in wish 3 about how comfortable I want to be, like no TV and radio, don't tuck the sheets in around my feet, that makes me crazy, like the little quirky things that are going to make me more comfortable in my dying process that nobody would know unless I wrote it down. So we're going to cover that some next week when we talk about the wish 3, 4, and 5. But any thoughts right now on the addendum? Again, like I love entering this conversation with the 5 wishes because it's a template and it gives you so much that's in place. And then we can learn to do some of these more refined forms. But I love the idea that the addendum gives us a framework for expressing really who we are and what our philosophies are and what we really want, which is if we are somehow in an accident or unresponsive or unconscious, our family and our friends are going to be so grateful to have this because it's going to guide them. So any other thoughts, feedback, suggestions, questions about the addendum?
Did you say that you would share that just because you thought of things that I would never even think of? I mean, like sheets in your feet. I mean, like, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I'll go back to this. I'll go back to my website again and just show you where it is here. So this is the page that is, again, when you look up here, this is the end of life links and resources. And it has all of these beautiful resources here. And the addendum is quite close to the top. It's here in a Google Doc and it's here in a Word doc. And you are welcome. Obviously, you don't want the thing, like with my name and my birth date and all my stuff, but you're welcome to copy and paste into your own document and then edit, delete, change, just use it as an inspiration to create your own. And you'll, take as much of it as you want. It's a great resource.
Thank you.
Mhm. Other thoughts about the addendum or questions? Okay. So the other thing to introduce you to is the end of life checklist. And that is I have it on the website as a PDF or as a Word document or as a Google Doc. And feel free to copy this over and make your own and change things around. This is just a template that you can use, but you're learning a ton. You're getting a huge fire hose of paperwork thrown at you today and next week. And the chances that you're going to get it all done in our time together are probably pretty small. You're going to have to follow back up and follow through. So this is a way for you to document some what you want to do, the date that you'd like to complete it, and then if you have completed it, any notes. So feel free to make your own version of this, but this is something to start to work with. Any questions about the checklist? Okay. One of the things that I like to do is to create a buddy system with folks here in this class, because you have a lot of shared language by going through this class together, and everybody needs help and support to get to the next step with this process. So I'm going to set you all up into breakout rooms, and I want you to start filling out your checklist, like what you want to do, by when, and what kind of support you might need to do it. So I can just randomly set you up in groups, and then those will be your buddies, and you just stay with your buddy. So if you have a preference of who you want to be buddies with, let me know now while I'm setting up these rooms.
Should we put it in the chat or just tell
You can
you?
tell me by voice.
I would love to buddy with Margie Campbell.
Okay, so Phyllis and Margie. All right, let me.
Annie?
Who said that, Anne?
Audrey?
Phyllis,
No, Annie P?
Margie. Okay, so I have Phyllis and Margie in a room. Great. And so Audrey, did you have someone in mind?
Annie P?
Annie P. Okay, so I'm going to put Audrey and Annie P in a room. Great. Any other preferences?
Lori, what would you think? Would you like to? Lori? This is Annie. This is the other Annie.
Annie and Lori.
I can't hear you.
Oh, she's muted.
I think Lori just chatted. Somebody named Lori just chatted, but maybe that's the different Lori that they
It was
had.
I
me.
have to leave.
Oh,
She
I
has
have to leave. She says she has to leave. See you next week.
I just
Okay.
got a text. Thank you.
All right, and then I'm gonna assign randomly. Anybody else have preferences? No? Okay. All right.
Will we get replays on this?
Yeah.
Will we also have a way to stay connected with the whole group afterwards?
Yes, I can share everybody's emails, and what I usually say is if you don't want your email shared, let me know and I won't include you. But so Annie, Lori is leaving, so it's like everybody's like perfectly matched right now in pair. So Annie, why don't you stay with me? Because Lori's left, and then you can connect up with Lori in another way. So one of the things to do when you go into your buddy rooms is exchange contact information, because you're going to be supporting each other. So email addresses or phone numbers, whatever works best. So I'm going to do 15 minutes because I want you to just talk about whatever is alive for you right now, but also really start to put a plan in place about what we've talked about today. And you starting to get a sense of what's coming next week, the DNR, some of the financial stuff. So start to put a plan into place about what your timeline looks like and what subtasks need to happen, and really just support each other in that process. So I'll give you 15 minutes and then call you back and we'll have some time to process out. Okay, and if you are in a room alone for some reason, you can just stay here or just come back and I'll reassign you.
Talk later than.
This was a little bit of chaos. That's okay.
We lost some people.
Death
Anyway, here
is
you come.
chaos. Life is chaos. It's all chaos.
Yep.
I'm back.
Okay. So that was actually helpful for me to sit in with a couple people doing a buddy system. So my suggestion to you is get as specific as you can with your checklist. Who are you going to speak to and by when, right? And like, when are you going to have a clarity about your healthcare agent? So as specific as you can, because that's more likely where things are going to happen. And I was telling Annie and Pam, they ended up in the main session talking, is that you can give this excuse of, listen, I'm taking this class and I have homework. And part of my homework is to talk to my family and my friends about death and about planning for death and about the death care agent work. And like, I would like to have these conversations with you and I want to have them in a timely way. Like, I'm not dying or I am dying or whatever's true for you, but, to really, really, really prioritize these conversations. The reason that Wish One can be so tricky is that it's tied to all of these conversations in our lives. So try to schedule some of those if you can this coming week, and ask your buddy, get really specific about the kind of support that you'd like to ask from your buddy. Listen, I want, if you can get with your buddy one time this coming week, that'd be great. By phone or video would be ideal. And I guess I will send out the list of everybody who is buddying with each other, including the people who are not here today, or Naomi and Lori. Naomi, who's here, but is not able to speak or put her video on, and then Lori, who stepped out early. So yeah, as specific as you can. As specific as you can about what you want to accomplish, and as specific as you can about the kind of support that would be helpful for you. And use the class as an excuse to have these conversations. Listen, I have to have these conversations. I want to have these conversations. Building deaf literate community is an ongoing thing that people ask me about, like, it's such a taboo subject in our culture. So how do we have these conversations? And I don't know, I've made a bunch of suggestions in the past, but I think there's always more suggestions. Like I always have this suggestion of having a death and dessert party, like make a big old chocolate mousse or chocolate cake or some delectable thing, and then invite people over and like, yes, come and have this dessert or a wine tasting or some really fun thing, and be like, that the caveat is we're talking about death. So, you make it fun and super compelling. Doing a book club together, on a book about death is a fun way to get death literacy in life with the people that are in our lives. What are some other suggestions for building death positive, death literacy, death literate community? Phyllis?
I was just thinking about having this, calling a family meeting and sitting with my husband and kids. In fact, I was talking to Margie about this and I said, we'll have to try to do it after the little ones are sleeping because my grandchildren are really young. But then I thought, it's very chaotic when you're trying to talk to each other and there's 4, 5, and 6-year-olds running around. But then I thought, how amazing to have them be part of this conversation in some way. And to have it to kind of begin to change our family's culture, around how we talk about death, to have them involved in this conversation when they're 4 years old, I don't know how that'll look. It'll be chaotic, but just popped into my mind.
Yeah, there's something about the conversation about death that I said earlier. It opens a portal to the magical and the mystical, and the kids might actually be more in touch with that, and they might actually get it. They might actually be like, "Oh, this is a portal. I know that portal. I've just come from that portal." Like they might actually be, respectful in a way that they wouldn't if the adults were just, sitting around shooting the breeze. So I would be fascinated by that experiment. It'd be lovely to have you report back. That's a great idea.
Would be amazing if I could schedule it in 1 week, though. I can't imagine.
Yeah, probably not. Probably
I'll
not.
try. I'm going to try.
Yeah. Linda.
Do you have like resources? Because this started me thinking about these green funerals and things like that I really don't know anything about. But that also could be a part of the conversation, because that's what Marissa and I talked about too. I said, I have to just start with some conversations, and I'm not going to be able to do it in person with my kids. One's in New York, one's in Italy, but I don't know, even that, like they are death illiterate and I'm not, and I'm maybe a little bit more because, been around the block a few times, but because that seems like it's a part of it too. And is that going to be part of the class, or do you have resources?
We're going to spend a lot of time on that next week. And you can also take a look at the website, and I have a whole big, long section about after death care. So yeah, that's going to be a main topic for next week, and a guest speaker on that too.
Oh, okay. Because the other thing was about like people being there. A lot of this could be done with Zoom or conversations. And then when you get down, provided you don't just die in a car accident, that's a whole different thing. But if you need care, like that beautiful photo you started with your friend and these people around all supporting her, that can come over time, right? Because I don't know who those people might be. That you can talk more about it.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about this next week. I see what's going to emerge as businesses in the future. There's death doulas, and we're going to talk about death doulas, and some death doulas are helping the dying person, but some death doulas are able and willing and versed and articulate and comfortable with after death care. But I see a whole conscious death care industry emerging, that people who can put home funerals on and caring for the body and home funerals, like this is gonna emerge. Right now it's a DIY thing, and we're, those of us who are in this world know each other, but it's a pretty small network at this point. But it's gonna continue to emerge because more and more people are interested in this. So stay tuned for next week for a big conversation about that. Thank you for bringing those up. So any other thoughts about the addendum, the checklist, the wish 1, the wish 2, having conversations with your family, your buddy, any kind of buddy questions? What else is alive for folks? Annie P.
I can't say that I really have questions. I just want to say that I feel really grateful for everything that you've put together here. It's very comprehensive. I've been highly impressed with what you're bringing forward, and I feel blessed that aspect of myself that drew me to this, because it's timely. And I agree with you, because I think there's going to be a lot more of that out there. And we're in such a transition with everything, with all of medicine and everything that's out there. And I'm in North Carolina, so I'm very grateful that you also introduced Karen to us. Now, one of the things that I have witnessed here, because I have a lot of people I know that are birth doulas, and North Carolina is not nice to birth doulas. They're underground. Is the same thing that way with death doulas here in North Carolina?
Well, I mean, North Carolina is not nice with even with midwives, even with like registered midwives.
Right.
Birth doulas and death doulas fall sort of outside of most categories, and there's not really a certifying agency, at least in the death realm. There are educational programs for death doulas. There are these sort of coalition like cohorts that are forming. There's not an overarching association or body. So that's just sort of still in the wild, wild west phases. But as far as that goes, the good side of that not having a certification is that there's no really state or federal oversight.
Cool.
So they're operating, they're really a support to the family. Death doulas are much like birth doulas. Let me come in and do the dishes. Let me come in and sit with the dying. Let me support the family. And death doulas, some of them are RNs and some of them are not, right? There's like a whole range of skill set for death doulas, but really death doulas are comfortable with death and comfortable being with the family and comfortable being around death. And then it's a similar thing to the patient advocacy. You would interview them. Like, hey, here's this list, and I have a list on my website on that same one we've been looking at today on the resources page, a list of death doulas, and then you look at the pictures, much like choosing a therapist, right? You look at the pictures, you look at what they say about themselves, and then you reach out to them like, hey, let's do a little intake, let's do a little interview. Do I resonate with you? So that's emerging in a beautiful, beautiful way. And then I suspect that more will be emerging around the after death care. And some of those doulas can bridge those worlds.
Cool. Well, I think your timing for all of this is absolutely spot on. And I'm very, very grateful that you've made this kind of provision for all of us. So thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, I've been teaching this class for about 5 years now, and it's so important, and now I'm doing this walking towards a good death class, which is an internal preparation for death, which is how do we get right internally, right? And these are sister classes because both are really important. You could have all your paperwork done and then be like, just avoiding and resisting the whole internal process. Or you could have the internal process really good and be really in a soulful place and be really present, but not have your external stuff. And you really need them both. What else? What else is alive for people?
Lee, do you have the Neptune Society as a resource for body disposition?
I don't know. What do they, what is?
I'll show you.
Do they compost? I know I have all kinds of things on there. The affirmation, the composting.
The Neptune Society, it came out of Neptune, the god Neptune for the sea, and they just come and get your body. It's a body disposal program, and so anybody wherever you die in the world, they can call 1-800-NEPTUNE, and they will come and get you. And of course, you have to be registered with them, which I am. And then they cremate you and send your ashes. They'll take them out to sea, or they'll send them to whoever you want them sent to. So it's a inexpensive way to just, transportation. It's collecting you, transporting you, cremating you. It's just easy peasy. At least that's.
It's free?
No, it's not free. No, it's not free.
Oh, okay.
It's inexpensive. It's not like having a big hoopla. If you don't go to a funeral home or any, you're just cremated. And I've already paid for it and it's all, so it's like, nobody has to worry about it. Just a given.
Y'all are eager about this death stuff. We are gonna totally go there, and that's great. I mean, most towns and cities have places that can cremate you, and
Yeah.
this one is specific that they're gonna do the whole process. So that's great. Thank you. If you want to send that to me by email, I can put that on my resource list.
All right.
Thanks. Yeah. What else? What about buddies? Did you exchange information? And great. No, you didn't. So Chris was with Jess. Why don't you all chat with each other in the chat box and give each other email addresses and phone numbers? Anybody that didn't exchange information, try to talk to each other this week. Get on the phone this week. It might be a little overwhelming. I'm aware of the fire hose aspect of this course, which is why I try to slow it down and have some time to talk and integrate, because if we don't get it in our bodies, it's just going to be all this head stuff, and we put the pile of paperwork aside and never look at it again. So the integration process is important, and part of the buddy system is the friendship support element, an accountability element, right? We have a hard time holding ourselves accountable, but it's lovely to support somebody else in a kind way, and also lovely to get supported in a kind way, to be accountable to these dates and these processes.
Lee, I just want to say there's something else much bigger going on here, because when Cindy and I got together, I thought, oh my Lord. I mean, we already have things in common. It's just thought, wait a minute, random? Oh no. So thank you. It's really delightful.
Yeah, there's a divine orchestration at work that is bigger than all of us.
You bet.
Same thing happened with me and Margie. That's why we wanted to pair up, because in the previous random selection, we found out that we're both members of the Baha'i community, and there's not that many of us in the world. And so the fact that there were two of us on the screen together was stunning, so we have already, this shared understanding of the nature of death. And so that's marvelous. And I really do, I'm like you said, the internal process I've spent much time with, but filling out forms. So I really need somebody to hold me accountable to dates and things,
Yeah.
That'll be so good.
And I think we can look at this as good enough for now. Can we get our paperwork good enough for now? I have redone mine, and yes, I have to take it and get it notarized every time. But like the last time I did mine was 2019, and I'm procrastinating and I need to update everything, but like, it's got to be good enough for now. It might not be the perfect healthcare agent. It might not be the perfect, end of life prolonging measures that you have perfectly figured out, but just err on the side of good enough for now. That's how you're going to get it done. And yep, you could die before you get it perfect. And that's life. That's life.
Or not.
Yeah. Or you could come back to it in 5 years, 10 years, whatever, and do it again, and you'll have another opportunity to take a pass at it. But I think we can get really paralyzed in this, like, oh my God, I gotta get everything perfect. Oh, and then it's just, we get this collapse and contract into this place. And so, that's the question of like, can you put some reasonable, realistic deadlines on these things, have enough of these conversations that you feel good enough, make an addendum that feels like it captures you well enough, and then call it good for this go around. Can you give yourself some kind of reasonable deadline, even if it's 6 months out?
Right. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. Other thoughts, other feelings, Oh, it's quiet.
One thing that came up for me, kind of in processing, we kind of got squished and didn't get a lot of time at the end, is to just send an email out to my family members and say, I'm taking this class, and send a link or something so they can look at it if they like, and just say, I'd love to have conversations with you at some time this spring or summer about this. Let me know, if you're interested or something like that, to just put it out there, rather, because I just know myself well enough. This, like, if I need to choose people to talk with and then next time is our last time, it could just get into that procrastination mode. So I think that's one of the things I want to commit to myself, is to send one to my family and then send another one to my friends, to say, and even the friends one with the chocolate cake, I don't eat chocolate cake party or something, is to just propose it. Because all along I've been emailing this information to about 6 different friends, hoping they could take it with me. Who are local. So
Yeah.
I'm going to add that, instead of choosing certain ones and have the conversation in the next week or 2 or something, I'm just going to put it out there and make a commitment, time commitment for myself to make that first go around good enough, by a certain date. I think that's really great to set that date. It's good for me anyway.
Yeah, I like that. What you're saying is recommend people to check the class out, take the class, because then when you have a shared literacy, a shared language, a shared vocabulary, then the conversations are so much easier to step into. And, just talking about death demystifies the fact of having the conversation. And once people start to have it, it's delightful to actually talk about death. It's really heart opening. It's really spiritual, because, no matter what faith, religion, system, but it's mystical. It's a mystical conversation, and everyone has access to the mystical. And so, if we can get over that hump, it can be really rich, actually. So I think that's right. If people share the experience of going through something like this, then they're more on the same page, which is a great segue into, I have a few last slides to share before we end. That I'm doing this very workshop again, September 10th and September 17th. So if you have folks in your life that want to take it, and I'll probably do it in January of next year. I do it 2 or 3 times a year. So just September 10th and September 17th, and I've already updated my website so that if folks want to register now for September, they can. So that's one possibility. You can send for people like, hey, this is the next time it's happening. And then, as I mentioned earlier, my dear friend Mary, who's an elder and a death walker, she calls herself, she's amazing. We do, several people on this call, Marissa and a couple other people have taken this class. It's a 4-part series on an internal preparation for death. It's called Walking Towards a Good Death. And it's, it's really, really profound. We spend our entire time on the inner world and on the mystical realms. So those are 2 things coming up. And just want to end with this beautiful meme I saw on Facebook from a Death Cafe participant. And it says, working at a hospice, I asked a woman, what's it like to know that you are dying? She responded, what's it like pretending that you aren't?
Right.
Oh, that's perfect.
That's a great.
So good.
So any last thoughts, any last contemplations for today? Marissa, yeah.
I just wanted to say that and I don't think that we're going to be covering anything like this in the class, but there was a person here when I first moved here who was diagnosed very quickly after we got here with a brain tumor. And one of the things she decided to do was, rather than having a memorial service, is having a farewell party. And so the things that people say at memorial services, she got to hear them. So I just think that's a beautiful thing, and something to consider as we're looking through all these plans, because somehow that just feels so much warmer and kind of uplifting. So I was very impressed by her.
Yeah, you know, we should tell people at birthdays or at other celebrations how we feel about them, right? So we get to hear it when we're alive. That's another thing to do, right? Like have a preparation for death birthday party or like a dry run, a dress rehearsal. Like tell me everything you're going to tell me at my funeral, my birthday party.
Oh, that's great.
I too want to say thank you. Lee, you are just a fantastic facilitator, and to pull all this together and the reflection of everybody, what we say is really rich. And this is, I just feel so blessed because I took the course that you did with Mary, but even before then, I had just come to my mind 5 months ago, like, gosh, how am I going to talk to death? I don't know enough. And so now I have a little more ideas, and especially with my kids, because I knew that they were not handling it well. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's the way I handled my father's death. I'm going to change it at least, So, and then this arrived. So, a whole course about it.
Yeah, well, it's an absolute delight. It's my favorite topic. So I'm delighted to be here with you all. And
thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lee.
I'll see you in a week.
Live better by talking about death. It gets you to live.
Oh my God, so good. It creates ecstatic possibilities for life. I mean, just the gratitude of being alive. When you're familiar with death, you're just so grateful every moment. And that is a beautiful place to be. So.
Well, you're a walking template of it. I mean, you really are. You're so vital, and here you talk about death all the time. It's amazing.
I
know.
know.
It's really just great.
Yay. So good to be with you all. And I'll send an email with the buddy names, and let me know if you don't want your name going out with that group. But otherwise, yeah, we'll see you in a week.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.